Did it work?
It worked.
Man,
It's working.
57th time's a charm. All
You'd
right.
think our age and experience combined would have us done with this already.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know what's going on. But I think we're on. So let's roll with it. Let me minimize this screen here. But yeah, that was a headache, dude. Sorry. Like,
That's no big deal.
I
I
know
kind of set up for this. I will say my wife took my daughter to the grocery store while my son's taking a nap, so I'm watching the monitor. But I said, I don't know, somewhere around an hour, hour and a half. I've seen them go longer. I've seen them go shorter. We'll
Yeah, I
see.
mean, yeah, we'll just see what happens. But sky's the limit. I do think in general, um, people don't have the craziest attention spans. So sometimes when they're long, I can see all the like analytics of how long people watch these things and stuff. And, people usually tend to dip out around 40 minutes, So
Really?
yeah, that's about
Man.
average. Seems like people like, you got to think about it. A bulk of people probably listen to this kind of stuff on their phone while they're on the treadmill. You know what I mean? Or driving to work or something like that. It's not,
Yeah.
we're not Joe Rogan. You know what I mean? Like, it's not like we're going to be like super interesting for people to listen to for 3.5 hours, So,
Yeah, I guess if I'm drawing, I like to be alone. That's when I kind of put things on in the background. But every one that I've seen, even the guy that you interviewed, and I can't recall his name now, the jujitsu fellow.
wrestling coach?
Uh, yeah, which is also nice, man. Getting some insight on somebody else's craft, because I feel like this whole tattoo artist and depression and all this stuff that comes up a lot, it's always kind of the same thing. It's nice to see somebody else that's serious and passionate about a craft and kind of seeing where their brain goes about pushing themselves. So I really enjoyed catching that one.
Cool.
I didn't know who he was, and I thought,
Good.
well, surely he's a tattooer as well. So it was really refreshing to find out that he wasn't actually.
I've
So it
done
was
that.
good, man.
I've interviewed a couple of like martial artist friends, so I don't really know which one you're talking about. Um, I'm guessing
It's been
Adam was it a wrestling coach or was it a boxing guy?
it must have been wrestling.
Yeah, okay.
Uh,
Yeah.
I kind of
Military.
caught some of them all in a row because I was
Okay.
like, oh, well, we're talking about this. Let me get my wheels greased a little. And I said, oh, there's Aaron. That's cool. Let me check
Yep.
that out. And I think you had the Sean Barber one.
Yep. Yeah, so
Uh,
overall my idea with doing this podcast is I'll just give you the synopsis of where it came from. Um the idea was I spent a lot of time at the Jiu-Jitsu Academy, and obviously I've spent most of my life tattooing and making art. And there's definitely a lot of crossover over like laser focused kind of people. Like there's a lot of people in both jujitsu and in tattooing, or say even like graffiti, right? Where they're so singularly focused um, on their craft and the thing that they're doing that it just, I don't know, it seems like a lot of personalities kind of like crossover with, I don't know if it's a type A thing or just a focus thing or whatever, but I thought it would be neat to get some conversations going between like almost like both sides, like to see how one side deals with it versus, like with, say difficulties. See how one side deals with their difficulties versus another side, like the tattooers versus the painters. Cuz there's a lot of similarities between tattooers and painters, but then there's also like a huge difference between the two also, right? So, I thought it would be like an interesting way to kind of like get my fingers dipped into different circles that I run in and just, get some conversation started. Um, so I didn't want this to be focused on tattooers by any means. But I think naturally it will be. You know what I mean? Like that's the bulk of people I know are going to be tattooers.
I'm sure the soup is vast with the tattooers more than, I mean, I don't know how long
Yeah.
you've been doing martial arts, but I definitely know you've been tattooing a very long time. So your
Yep.
pool to fish from is greater, I'm sure. But yeah, I think it's refreshing. I really like that you had, well, the blend of the two. You had Sean Barber, which is
Right.
obviously a brilliant painter, and then you had Aaron Nagel, which is just a painter and not a tattooer, although he is a good collector. But then you've got the bridge with Sean because he's tattooing these days, and it's kind of nice
Yep.
to get two perspectives in one avenue.
Well, and what's
So
great
yeah, I
about
think it's
both of
nice.
those guys too is like Barber is equal parts tattooer, painter, teacher. You know, like he's as much of an instructor and a teacher than he
Yeah,
as he is anything.
yeah,
I mean, he's a fantastic instructor, and Nagel is kind of equal parts painter, musician, and absolute gym rat. Like he's a uh, like the his athletic side is just as important in his life as anything else. So you know, it's cool how multifaceted both of those guys are. And and the same thing with Utaro. Like that's why I wanted Utaro on here. Is he's just as much artist as martial artist as just like philosophically sound and kind and wise, and like there's all these things to him. So now
yeah.
we
He
get
seems really down to earth. I thought that was a good little interview too. I
Utaro's
really like getting kind of geared up for this stuff. Like, what do I expect? How should I be?
right. Yeah,
I've
just
done a little bit
be
of
you.
this here and there.
Other
Nothing
interviews?
crazy. Yeah, nothing crazy. I typically kind of bow out of that stuff. Um, for all the reasons I kind of told you before. It's like, uh, navigating this world now in a public sense is like walking on eggshells. Like to carry on comfortably means to be behind the curtains a little bit. And I feel like it's one, safe, and two, doesn't toxify the environment that I love.
Sure.
Which I see all the time. A lot of people have in these situations where somebody in cancel culture is throwing somebody under the bus unnecessarily,
Hmm.
uh, and then it's defense, reclusiveness, and dissolving to a certain extent. And I figure, well, bit once, twice shy. I just kind of live off of everybody else's bit once, and I'm now twice shy. But this is the first time that I felt like, well, I'll give this a go because it seemed like your audience was a bit wider. It wasn't so uh, stuck between the guardrails. So
Yeah. I'm
we'll see.
interested what kind of interested what you mean though. Like what's the I mean, it sounds like some of what you just said is fear motivated. Like you feel like you're sticking your neck out just by being public and present. Uh,
Yeah, I think judgment comes so easy to people that are inactive in their own lives, uh, which is scary because your audience, when they've got the time to commit to listen to somebody instead of being active in their own lives, all it is like this room for judgment. I feel like in the past handful of years, especially since COVID, and people were stuck in their houses, they didn't know what else to do but start casting judgment and casting it harshly. Uh, whatever put them in that situation. I think maybe just being told you got to be in your house, feels
sure.
oppressiveness and uh, so I think outwardly people started judging harshly because they just had to have something going on inside the house since they couldn't get outside the house. Uh, I honestly, I don't know what it is, but there had definitely been a shift. And, you
There's
started
a
seeing
shift.
people getting run under the bus all the time just on the internet. And I'm thinking,
I think about this a lot
you know,
because it's super prevalent on social media for sure. Like social media is super toxic, right? Like I just turned my Instagram back on because I'm going to the Hudson Valley Convention this weekend,
oh,
and
cool.
it's just like man, I almost feel like I'm just being a bad participant by not having social media. So I haven't had social media since I think I turned it off at Christmas. So now it's like what the end of March. So I had like a 3 month break. Um, and the reason I got off of it is just there's well, it's multifaceted, but there's a lot of trolls for sure. There's a ton of negativity. Um, I also have my own personal hangups with just like self-loathing, competitiveness, and addiction. And so I do have a really hard time monitoring my own um, time. Like I can very easily if I get on Instagram, I can very easily watch an hour of life vanish before I even know what happened. It's just like, wow, how is that an hour of just like scrolling through nonsense? So for me, it's kind of a safeguard just to not have it. But um, I think what I notice is there's so much negativity and there's so much conflict and like aggression, but I don't really see that in the real world ever, like almost ever. Maybe a little bit in traffic. Like maybe some people have a tendency to like road rage in a traffic jam or whatever, but
Man.
I don't ever see anybody have that sort of brash, like ever. I'm never at the grocery store and someone's just in there like bold and confident and mouthing off to someone. Like you don't really ever see it. So it's weird that it's so present online and so absent in the real world.
Well, I think people go there to get shocked. People want to see that stuff. It's like paying for a fight.
Oh yeah.
Like they want to see that action. We are, cutting heads and rolling them downstairs.
Yeah.
That's where we come from. And I think we all have that animalistic kind of, we want to preview things like that. And if we could do it here and it's a safe place with a safe distance and the reality's rude, that's what we all thrive on to some extent. I don't want to say thrive, but we saw the action movie. Now we can go about our days because our lives are a little more comfortable. But
Totally. Yeah.
I see people creating a lot more drama there. And most of it is real, like people have captured something because we're glued to our phones.
Yeah.
So there's a little bit of excitement there, but yeah, I'm with you to a certain extent. Like I was just talking about it yesterday at my shop, how every single day I make it a point to watch the news. If the radio's on in my car, I've got about 15 minutes to drive to work, and it's kind of my own time. I finally get a little piece of my own time, and a lot of time I just turn off the radio, and just be in silence. But if I'm not, I'm just listening to the news, and maybe NPR or whatever it is. It's just spilling out catastrophic events, and you end up at work wound up and upset that kids are getting killed in Gaza Strip,
Yep.
all of these things. And I just keep thinking, well, all I am is a sponge of negativity. So much like you and Instagram, I think there's a point where you just have to clock out,
Yeah.
regroup, and see how effective it is on your life. And if it's shaping inspiration or if it's shaping laziness, like there is an effect. There's a side effect to all of this stuff. And the thing with Instagram, and I think we're all kind of going through it, is, when it first came around, it was show and tell. All the people that I loved, people I thought were peers, it's like, oh my God, here they are. And it's
Yep.
in chronological order. So I got to see what they did 20 minutes ago. That's amazing. And,
Yeah.
All of that, being the sponge and absorbing it till I couldn't take in anymore. And it was just leaking out the wrong way. So I just realized that, well, now I'm just addicted and this is repetition that I'm showing up for. I'm not really finding a spark of interest anymore.
Yep.
And it just became repetitive. So I'm kind of like you, man. You gotta clock out and just kind of focus on your own stuff. And also like you, I think that you and I find endless avenues to something that we find intriguing. So it's like, yeah, Instagram's just getting in the way, and if I post something, then I need to be there to answer to a response. And that just creates work. And if I'm working on that and on my phone, then I'm not present with my kids. I'm not present with a project I'm working on.
Mm-hmm.
And you do feel like you're just unraveling time that was useless, not well spent. But then you get the depression, you've got the self-loathing thing and this level of comparison, and those are all different beasts in their own way. And I think I'm probably at the clearest I've been now with Instagram and my relationship with it. And it's just like, take it or leave it. I don't care.
Yeah.
If my door's open and I say I have a sign that says tattoo on the building, I'm going to do tattoos. Not all of them need to be outdoing everybody else. And that's kind of where I was at one point.
Yep.
And now I'm just back to outdoing myself. And that's been the most refreshing feeling to have. Like I'm not down in the dumps about it. I'm not comparing myself. I know I'm me, and I'm the only me out there. There are some people that are close, and that's fine. There's a lot of people around the world that can enter the same arena at the same levels, and that's perfectly fine. But I'm the only me, and I need to stop comparing myself to other people besides myself.
Yeah.
Like if I can outdo me, that's what I'm trying to do. And
Yep.
more, there was a time too where I would scroll through Instagram. How did this person do that thing?
Mm-hmm.
Even if it was just to avoid how they did it, or to challenge myself and say, I'm thinking about this, maybe this person kind of did it, and look at it and then realize like I shouldn't have looked in the first place. Now I just kind of look at my own work to inspire myself or see where I did something wrong or did something right. Uh, by my own perspective. It's all subjective, and that's kind of where I'm at now. I know it's pretty easy to just, cash in and move along. It doesn't matter anymore. Not like it once did. And that's another thing too. Like, listening to the conversations that you've had with people, I think we've gone through it. Some of us are still going through it. Some of us have to go through it. It's up and coming. But I feel like I kind of went through the hell of Instagram. I challenged, I questioned, and now I'm just like, who cares?
Yeah.
I'll go there for a little bit. And I mostly, like, I've got my car page. I've got 2 separate pages, and I don't really share. Like, all the people that follow me on my car page have no idea I'm a tattooer.
Yeah.
And all the people on my tattoo page, most of them, 99% of them, don't know I'm a car guy, because I don't want those two to cross-pollinate each other. I want to keep my eyes focused on this side and my eyes focused here. But I find that I'm on my car page more than I am
That's awesome.
on the artist page, because cars don't influence me so easily when I don't want them to. Working on cars is harder. It takes a lot more time to get something done. Whereas a tattoo, I found myself in a position just recently, and it kind of blew my mind. I did a tattoo on one of my close friends, and it was a drawing that I had done like a year before, tiny little sketch. And it was a geisha head, and I just kind of drew what I was going to do in this spot on this guy. And then instead of facial features, I just drew a little smiley face. And this guy saw it in my sketchbook, and he said, man, I would totally get that. I've got this little spot to fill.
Mm-hmm.
So I can make something like that happen. So we did it, had fun. I even posted it, and there was some activity on it. And at the end of the day, I looked at whatever was happening when it was bedtime, and I saw a guy on there left a smirk. Mr. He had like a blue check mark. I can't recall his name now, but just kind of going through the comments, and I went to his page, and I saw almost the exact same thing. And I thought, this guy ripped me off from 6 a.m. to 10 p.m.
No way.
And he's got it at the top of his page. Get this. I look at it, and I guess it's just a pin where you could like move whatever photo you feel is more important that people need to see every time they open it. Yeah. This guy did it months before I did it. And I thought, how is this possible? It really, like, it blew my mind. It shook me.
Oh, no way.
Yeah. And so then I started to rethink, like, how could this happen? How is this possible? And I'd love to show pictures. I can't do it here now, but I reached out to the guy. I talked to him, and I was like, this is kind of blowing my mind at how almost exact this is. And, I've shown other people since then, because I just carried on. Like, how the hell could this happen? This is too close, too coincidental.
Weird.
And I was thinking, well, I drew it before that, but it was just a doodle in my sketchbook. It was on loose leaf, just shoved in there. That was even older than when he did the tattoo. But when I saw the tattoo, I thought, what the hell, man? This is why I hate Instagram, is people will just rip you off just like that. Right. And this is why I don't post anything. And it turned out that I looked like the guy that ripped this dude off. Oh, man, I wish I had a picture of it. I would love to just show the...
Text it to me, and I'll throw it on the video here so people can see what we're talking about.
Oh, man, it'd be great. It blew my mind. And it's blowing my mind more than it seems to be blowing everybody else's mind. But I think somehow this got in my head.
Did you ever post the drawing?
No, I never put it up. That's what's crazy. There's a joke. One of my good buddies, Jimmy, he always talks about anything is possible. And then I always throw an impossible scenario at him and go, no, it's not possible. And this has been going on for 15 years. And when I saw that, I was like, what the hell? And my wife was like, what's going on? I said, look at this. And I showed her on the phone, and she was like, they ripped you off that fast? It's like, they did this in November. And we were both just like, what? Paused it in time. And I just thought, anything is possible. This is insane.
Is there a chance that you saw it subliminally and just like logged it away?
I mean, that's the, what is it? Occam's razor, I think, is that's what my wife said. And I thought, well, if that's the case, this is the problem with Instagram, is nobody can point a finger. And that's why I want to stay off it. Because if I stay in my own lane and I'm focusing on my own things, but then it came down to, I made the drawing a year before I did it. It was just a loose doodle. And so that guy didn't see it.
Right.
You know, and I didn't see his work. And he actually does really nice work. All of it's like, I don't know, some fella in Europe. I'd have to look him up on my phone while we're talking. I'd like to give him some credit because he definitely deserves it. But it got to a point where I actually took mine down because I thought, you know, one thing I protect the most is trying not to copy anybody. I don't want to be anybody else's voice. I want to be my own voice. I think that's the most important. And I took it down, but, you know, I put it back up. The guy was very respectful. You know, he didn't believe that I took his idea, and he actually gave me an example of where he got it. Was from Rick and Morty, which I guess is a show that I've never seen it. You know, I don't watch too many shows, but I messaged him right away. I told him, like, this is insane. I remember watching this documentary of 3 triplets that were separate at birth, and you know, far later in their years, they're all married, and I believe like they all married a woman with the same name. And like they all had the same like food preferences. Like, this is my favorite food. This is my favorite song. All of these odd things. I just told this guy, it felt like we were twins separate at birth at how similar this thing was. But I mean, dude, for a week, like I just couldn't stop talking about it. You know, I sent 2 pictures, my picture and this guy's picture, and I sent it to the group text with my siblings. And it's like, check this out. This is insane. And I had to explain it to them. And then they were like, well, you know, there were cave drawings that were similar. I'm like, yeah, but you know, it was like from animals that exist. Like I can sit there and look at it, but this is out of our head. This is a concept. So I don't know. It blew my mind. And that's exactly what it was, this Occam's razor thing. It's like, well, if it was embedded somehow, this guy didn't see my drawing. I don't recall seeing his. And if I did see it, it would just be an example of what not to do on somebody, and then publicly put it out there like it was my own idea. So there's another facet of Instagram. And it's like, well, we're all just being programmed somehow, some way. So now I'm so reclusive. I just want to look at my own work. I want to be able to revise things that I thought maybe were weak. And scrolling through Instagram is something that I almost like to avoid now anyway, because I don't want that cross-pollination when I'm not looking for it. It feels like an attack. So I did, you know, I talked to a handful of people about it, and it was with a tattoo on the same guy. I did like 2 different tattoos, and that one was just a little side note. But I had a couple people saying, hey, where was that tattoo? You had it up and you took it down. And finally I was just like, oh, whatever. So I put it up again and just let it be active. But man, it shook me for real. I don't know if you've seen Requiem for a Dream.
Yeah.
But it's like when those guys did heroin and shot in, and then it's just like tunnel vision.
Yeah, right.
Like when I saw that, I was just like, what the hell? And then when I saw the date, anything's possible. I had to call my buddy Jimmy and tell him about it right away. It was pretty mind-blowing.
Yeah.
And still lasting effect is on me for sure. But whatever. It's a tool. And that's what it's been broken back down to. You know, everything can be simplified the way it is. And, you know, I can't lie. It's had its strings attached, and it's pulled some of my emotions. And I've, you know, turned my back on it. I've revisited it. I've posted a lot. I've posted a little. I've posted sections of things. I mean, it's, you know, cause and effect. It's all this big experiment, and then you got to figure out how to use it for yourself.
I think the
That being,
thing with it that bothers me, like I think the most, is how long I've been tattooing, and somehow it feels it there. This could just be me too. I don't know if this is like a shared thought that other tattooers have, but I think I'm 28 years in now, 27, 28, something like that. I started 96, so 28 years, and somehow the like overlying thought I have with Instagram is that if I want to be successful and I want to stay busy, I have to have an Instagram account. And that's the part of me that immediately like recoils defiantly to be like, nope, I'm done. Like I don't want
it
anything, I don't
feels,
want anything to do with it because I don't want to have to like I don't want Zuckerberg to have any control. Like it's just a silly thought to think that some tech guy in Silicon Valley that I rely on him for feeding my family, because it's not true at all. But that's the impulse I have, and it makes me want to recoil and not have anything to do with it. And then after a
well,
while, it's like, well, there are benefits to it. Like I like looking at your tattoos on Instagram. I do like seeing some of the stuff. I just don't like feeling like it's necessary. That's the thing that like eats at my spine.
well, it's a chain. It's an authority.
Yep.
And the thing I hate most in life is authority. I don't like control. I even have an issue with a car beeping at me to put on a seatbelt. It's like, ease up. I was going to put on the seatbelt, but now that you're barking the order at me, I feel like being defiant.
Yep.
But that's exactly what it is. It's like Zuckerberg says you can't exist without me, or
Right.
you can't reach your own potential without me being there to help you.
Yep.
And I don't like that either. And I think there's beauty in the beast. I I signed into Instagram and I loved it when it happened. I mean, what is this? 10 years now, maybe 11 years.
12, I think, for me.
And man, was it exciting. It opened up the world, oh, wow, there's more than 50 tattooers out there. It's not just Tattoo Artist Magazine. And,
Right. Yeah.
like the world got huge and you realize what a small fish you are. And that in itself is a motivation.
It can be.
But man, over the years, it's had its toll. It's done its things. I've had to respond. But I think what got real bad was uh, all of these talented tattooers that are now, uh, they're song and dancers. They're trying to do whatever Instagram is telling you to do. Show your face, make a reel, learn how to spin your phone and make something cinematic, and then you'll get more clickbait. Even now, man, I'm seeing like a lot of my friends, they'll bait you into leaving a comment on something. What's your favorite color? Star bright yellow or old gold, red?
Right.
Drop a comment. It's like, because they know if you have more comments, then you don't get shadow banned or whatever it is.
Mm-hmm.
And it's all these little trap doors that I don't care about. It's like, and if anything, what motivated me to be a bigger fish and the song and dance routine to stay relevant is like, well, if my artwork isn't enough, that's motivation for me to leave and figure it right back out here at home.
Yep.
So yeah, at the beginning, all of my clients for the most part were local. Once I started posting things on Instagram, my clients started to expand outside of the city limits.
Right.
And then I started getting more exposure. And then I had opportunities to go and visit other tattoo shops in other cities and say, hey guys, I'm going to be here. Yep. And people wanted a tattoo. So the fruit was there and it was worth the squeeze for sure. But it's gotten to a point now where it's a little bit scary that I'm not tattooing as many locals. They feel like I'm right down the road, but I'm too busy tattooing everybody from out of town.
Yeah.
And even like, I did some shirts. I drew up a shirt design, and what you want to do is sell merchandise. You build it, they will come, you sell it, wash, repeat. But then it got to a point where it's like, I'm going to release a shirt and they're all going to be going outside of the city.
Yep.
That's great. People want something. Now I got to package things, postage, get them out. It's a job in itself.
Oh yeah.
And I kept thinking, what about my local people? You know, I want to support the people that are around me. And, you know, it's just this double-edged sword. Instagram has all of this positive stuff over here and all this negative stuff over here. And all we've been doing over the years is trying to find that balance and tip the scales to keep something even. And it's a lot, you know, but I keep thinking, well, I'm not going to show my face on my Instagram. I'm not going to make some cute dance to get attention. If my tattoo isn't enough, I don't want to be a part of this. And ultimately, the bright side of that is I get to cater to my own people in my own city more. If I'm more available for them and I don't have as many people seeing me, so they don't travel, you know, I feel like it's a double-edged sword, but at this point, both sides are positive and not necessarily negative. Yeah, but I might have just gotten to that point, you know, it's like, well, who cares? I don't want to be shackled to this device. So that's kind of where I'm at now. You know, I think it's not bittersweet anymore. I think it's just sweet. I put out whatever I want on my Instagram. I try not to look at any other people's stuff, and just try to focus on my own work and be present at home. So I think I'm finally getting some sort of balance with it all that works for me.
That's awesome.
And really, like, listening to some of your interviews, it's like, I mean, now more than ever, I think we've all gone through it. We see a lot of people, hey, I'm taking a social media break. You know, if you want to get a hold of me, email me. It's like, well, you know, misery loves company, because, you know, like, other people are going through it too. And it's done something psychologically to us. You know, it's crippled us a little bit. So there is like an effect from this deal. And I think I finally have just made it through the darkness of it. And I'm feeling pretty good about it now. And I think a lot of people are. I think it's been nice to kind of, and, you know, I think it's because it's been around so long. But, you know, now we got the AI that people like to consider, and what's that doing for us, and the robots and everything else. And even that, it's like, you know, a robot could be a robot and have its own personality and its own style. However somebody wants to create something, that's great. But only me, I am the one creating what I'm creating, and I have to remain this individual that has some sort of value to any one person, you know? So whatever, AI, it's going to do what it's going to do. There's no stopping that force. And I think it can, you know, have its own positive effects too. I do feel like
I don't really know a ton about it, to be honest with you. I know it, you know, it pops up occasionally. I don't really know where it pops up occasionally, but I've heard people have a couple conversations, and I've, you know, read some stuff online or whatever, but I don't really know even what the opinions are about it, like what the risks are, or you know, I know it from like the fear of, you know, 1986 Terminator movie stuff. You know?
Yeah, I think it's all just a replacement thing. Like, why hire a human being, try and work with a human being, lay out a contract, when I could just say a few words into, I don't even know if interface is the right terminology, but you're eliminating human interaction, and you're trying to get, it wouldn't even be an entity, this thing to produce a visual, and then you could just either start over again, or accept what it came up with and put it out there, because there's no copyright, there's no infringement.
Right. So for instance, this program that we're using to do this podcast, right? It has a feature on it that's automatic. I don't think I could turn it off if I wanted to, but when we're done doing this interview, it's going to AI. It has like an AI side to it that's going to auto generate little 1-minute clips for Instagram, YouTube, Facebook, whatever. So in a sense, it'll go through and it'll somehow, I don't know how, somehow it will highlight discussion points and it'll put them into like a little edited clip for us. thus removing the potential for me needing to not only spend time editing myself, but to go hire someone that knows how to edit an interview, right?
Right. So there's the blessing, right?
Well, without that, I probably wouldn't. I mean, it's not that I wouldn't be able to do it, but it's just an enhancement. It's not. It's not doing the interview for us. It's not guiding our conversation. It's not putting us in a social circle where I can hit you up and say, "Hey, can we do this thing? Can we talk?" Like it's not doing. It's just kind of like tweaking it, making it a little more efficient. I feel like it's for what I've dealt with. I feel like it's fuel injection. You know what I mean? It's like, it's not that the carburetor didn't work fine. You put an old Edelbrock on your 64 and you figure out how to tune that thing and it runs like a champ. But it's not fuel injection. It's just a different thing,
Well, and that's the thing. How effective does somebody want to be? And I feel like
right.
This song and dance that I'm referring to of effectiveness to sell your artwork or now your personality and whatever it is, just to draw people's attention. It's Instagram is making new guidelines that you have to fall in. And
yeah, if you want to be successful or whatever.
If that's
that internet world. Yep.
Right. But you're right. You can fine tune it. You can be minimal. People love minimalist things. They don't need all the bells and whistles and explosions to have attraction.
Right.
We're talking about terrible news, explosions, war, drama. That's what most people are drawn to. There's like this magnetism to that, but less is more in many cases. But yeah, you cannot use any of that stuff that's AI generated on there for slides or whatever. It could just say your podcast name and people know what that content is. They don't need it. Some people will, and whatever. I think no matter how you slice it, you're going to get one kind of audience or another kind of audience. But when there's content, there's somebody that wants it. And I think that's kind of where, I let go of the reins for this opinion on AI. It's like, use it or don't, it's going to exist. And that's it. If you feel like it's going to streamline your work and bring you the attention you want, there it is.
Yeah.
Let's say that you wanted that before AI and now you've got to work much harder. It's like, well, now they've made something for you. You don't have to use it. People with guns, they don't need to use guns. You've got an opinion on it. They kill people. Doesn't mean you have to participate. Right. I see this stuff all the time.
Like, I feel like in the gun analogy, it's almost similar where it's like, if we could vote it into non-existent, I'd vote guns into non-existence.
Same.
Like if we could backtrack it to where it's like, man, just get rid of this computer garbage in general and go back to like living on a farm and community and like, dude, I'd vote for it. Like
the older I get, the more I want that for sure.
But that's a fantasy. It doesn't, you can't fantasize it into non-existence. Like there are guns, people have them. AI is going to happen. Like people are going to lose their jobs, like adapt or die. Like, I think it just boils down to that simplicity of you can't not have it. It's here. So
it's here.
And we're guilty. I mean, especially with like the art side of AI, like any of us that have ever posted our art online are guilty of contributing to what it has become.
Oh, absolutely.
Like we've used the platform and now it's kind of like debt, like debt's come due, like we've all benefited from it. And now it's like, damn it. Like I wish I hadn't been involved, but wishes don't do dishes, man. Like here we are.
Wishes don't do dishes. I like that.
Yeah, I stole it.
Yeah. I like cake and ice cream, but I know what it does to me and it's got an effect. So how much can I participate into something I know is also ruining me?
Yep.
So I'm definitely, balance is something that we're all trying to gather in our lives. And every day they're throwing things on the scales and we don't know how to do it, but we make adjustments. And it's been a wild decade of Instagram and making adjustments. And there's definitely been bittersweet times throughout it all.
Let's backtrack this real quick. How long have you been tattooing?
24 years this year.
So you're about half in with Instagram and social media. You've probably had some degree of social media the whole way. Do you have MySpace?
Oh yeah. I had MySpace.
Was that probably right when you started?
I was just talking about.
Okay.
MySpace did come along just a handful of years afterwards.
Okay.
I feel like I had that before I had a Facebook.
I did for sure. Yeah.
And
That was my
okay,
social media experience, was websites and forums. Seth
r-
Fury used to have a forum called the Reed Street Forum.
right. So
And that,
that's where I was first too.
yep, that was my first interaction with the internet side of communicating with other tattooers. And it was awesome. Like, I totally adored it.
Oh man,
And it was so good. And then it
it
moved into MySpace, and that was like, okay, now the cat's kind of out of the bag a little bit. Like, it was like now we're kind of not leaking information to the mass public, but now we kind of have a way to show non-tattooers what we're working on. The Reed Street Forum, you could show other tattooers what you were working on. And then MySpace was like, okay, now we can show like general public in my local area. And then Facebook, it was like, I guess, I mean, at first it seemed bigger, and then it seemed to collapse on itself for me pretty fast, where it was like, oh, all of a sudden, like, all the tattooers switched to Facebook. And then before I know it, it seemed like it was just the crazy aunt or like my family members, or
you
it
know, it's
was
like
like,
everybody's diary.
yeah, it
Everyone
was
wanted to
too
leave.
much. And then
Yeah.
Instagram, and I think I've already said this on this podcast once, I can't remember, but when Instagram first came out, I thought it was just a photo filter app. And I had one of my clients come in and they were like, hey man, like, why are you posting all of this stuff? Or what, he had like some concern. It wasn't like I was doing anything like malicious or too, but he was just kind of like, why are you posting that? And I was like, how are you seeing this? And he was like, dude, you've got like a couple hundred followers on there that see, and I didn't know that it was online at all. I thought it was just like a Photoshop filter for a photograph. I had no idea.
Same for me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But the thing that was great about it was just imagery, and it was much too hard to make a statement. Like, I don't know if there was like a character limit of like how much you could do. I don't know if hashtags even existed. So it was like you could make a comment that was like, oh, here's a painting I did in 2007 with oil on canvas. And that was about it. It wasn't like you were making a political rant about how much you hate the vice president over blah, blah, blah. Like, that didn't exist at all. And then it just started growing into this monster,
Well, that's it. Everybody started jumping off Facebook and making their way over to Instagram. And,
Right.
that was the thing. If you didn't have a visual to post, then you kind of had no place for it. Yep. But now it's like, oh, well, now I could post a picture of the president and have my rant beneath.
Yep.
And then, it just flooded. That was the thing about Instagram.
Was that whole transition from when Zuckerberg bought it?
Oh, no, I think it was before that. And I think that's probably where he saw an opportunity.
Yeah.
I'm with you. When I first got it, it was recommended to me by a photographer. And he said, you can take some things. And, I complained about a crappy camera and getting flash burns on all these, moist tattoos that I just did. And I can't get a picture. He's, oh, well, you should try this. Download this on your phone. So I did it. And it was the same deal. I would see that there were notifications, but didn't necessarily know how they were or what they belonged to. And then it was the same deal. I got notified. Like, what you're doing is public. How? And then I abandoned it altogether. I opened up this location, Old Souls, January 1st, 2012.
Okay. Oh, yeah.
And it wasn't long after that somebody mentioned Instagram again. And it's like, oh, that sounds cool. And I re-downloaded it on my phone. And it said that I already had it.
Yeah.
And then that's when I was like, oh, this was that thing. It was a photo filter. I used it on a few things and didn't know what it was doing. And I just dropped it. But I signed back in. I changed my username, which was great because I got that nailed down. But yeah, since that day that I reconnected with it, that's when I abandoned Facebook. I was like, well, this is artists for artists. This is perfect. It's a visual. And this is what I do, like I'm looking at books with pictures, most of the time. My library is full of that. I'm a big visual person. So I thought, well, great. Now I don't need to listen to people's little rants and banters on Facebook. And that's when I abandoned it and went straight to Instagram. And that's pretty much all I've done. The only reason I have a Facebook now, and I kind of deleted it and restarted it, is the same thing with my Instagrams. I've got one for car related stuff.
Yep.
And that's the only reason I use Facebook, is for marketplace and buying and selling vehicles or parts. And that's it. I don't socialize on there. People ask for being a friend or a request, and I ignore all that stuff. I'll post a picture or two of cars that I own just so people know, like, I'm a car person. I'm trying to buy, I'm trying to sell, and that's it. But Instagram is where it's at for me. And, once it started becoming overly politicized, and that's when it really just started to take its own little nosedive. And now here we are with Facebook. And then Zuckerberg bought it. So yeah, perfect. Everything's a link from one to the other.
How much time are you spending on cars right now?
Well, we get winter, and this winter wasn't so bad, but just this morning, I went to a cars and coffee thing, and that's kind of kicking off the year. Because now it's spring and it was, 60 some odd degrees out there. So I drove something fun out with my buddy. But summer, I'm up to my neck in this stuff. Okay. And,
how many cars for projects?
I guess I'm actively working on, I don't know, maybe 5 cars right now. Okay. I've got one full-on show car that, I built 10 years. That was my childhood dream car. It was an El Camino. And it's an 84.
Okay.
But man, since I was a kid, I always loved those things. I thought they were unique and ugly and just like perfectly weird.
Yep.
And, I always talked, to my older brother, just like, oh, one day I'm going to have one of these, hydraulics and everything. And then I saw my first lowrider magazine and almost shit myself. I was like, oh my God, this is it. And, I built lowrider bikes and until I was an adult, and I used to compete building those things when I was a kid. And then I got my first El Camino, and oddly enough, I've had a bunch of them between this one and now having it completely built. And I've built it twice. The first time I built it and took it to a car show in Texas and got first place for it.
Oh, cool.
And then I decided the next show was in Colorado, and I said, I'm going to drive it. I'm going to blow some minds and show up. And I blew the motor in it. I didn't even make it like 2 hours out of the city before I blew the motor.
Sucks.
And yeah, like I had the whole car painted. It was painted. All the interior was done. And I showed it. I won. And then blew the motor, and I thought, you know what? I'm just going to redo the whole thing, like not just the motor. So I did a full frame off, every nut and bolt done. I mean, it's engraved gold and chrome, everything, Corvette motor in it, all this stuff.
Cool.
And when I was building it, I planned on taking it on the show circuit. Lowrider Magazine even contacted me and said they want to do a feature on it, because I had also, like, Reed Street, there's a lowrider forum, and I had a build-up page on it. And they reached out to me saying that they wanted to feature it in the issue whenever it was complete, because they liked what was happening with it. And man, I had kids. My dad ended up dying during this process. So it was steps forward, steps back, and I did. I ended up completing it. And I want to say maybe 12 years later, I took it to the same show in Texas. And this was just 2 years ago now. And showed it at the same show that I won first place the first time, and I won first place on it this time.
Oh, cool.
And I was just like, all right, that's it. I'm done with this car. I'm done putting money into this thing. So I've got this full show car sitting in my garage that I want nothing to do with now. And it was my passion, man. That was the one. And, I'm motivated by cars and their value. If I'm going to buy one, I want to have room to make a profit and flip. And so, when I say I'm working on 5 cars, I'll get a car, I'll do some minor upgrades to it and flip it and move it through, and it will just be like off my checklist of cars that I want. Or, I want them all. That's the problem. I don't, I like classics. I like old Chevys, but if I've had an El Camino, I've had like, I don't know, maybe 6 El Caminos now,
Okay.
all while I've had this one. But yeah, now it's an Impalas. I've got a couple 62s. I've got a 60 Impala. I got a 64 that will be coming hopefully tomorrow.
I mean, it's super time consuming. Do you find that it like eats into your art schedule, like your tattoo and make your own? Like, do you ever find times where you're like, man, I'm spending too much time on cars, or do you
Oh
ever manage
yeah,
that, or is it like a perfect balance?
no such thing as a perfect balance for me, but this is kind of what led us to this conversation. I was telling you about Chris Brand, and he and I were talking, and we mentioned you, and he said, you're a lot like Phil. And Chris just had a son.
Yeah.
So we both kind of started our families a little bit later, and a rude awakening it was for sleep, all those things involved. And I realized, well, I'm getting about 3-4 hours of sleep a night.
Mm-hmm.
And the bittersweet was, well, I'm also awake now, even though I've put my kid back to bed. I'm going to work on something. And, he was asking me just a couple of weeks ago, like, I don't know how you're doing all of this stuff. I got into this 3D printing and
Yeah, I want to talk
digital
about that.
sculpting
Yeah.
and so on and so on. He's like, how are you doing this? I was like, man, I guess I really don't even know. I don't know how to stop. Relaxation sounds great all the time, but when it's an opportunity to have, I also feel like it's an opportunity wasted. If I'm sitting, I might as well be doing something.
You think you have
Uh,
ADHD?
Absolutely.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah.
Switch.
I'm crazy, man. And
Me too.
you know,
It's a nightmare.
it is, man. It's a blessing and a curse. I tell people it's the poison and the antidote. If
More curse,
I
but
might need a psychiatrist, but
I
if
have
I just create something, then I feel better. I feel evened out. Like
yep.
if I have a day and I've got nothing to show for it, then I feel like I get depressed.
Why do you think that is?
So,
Are you
yeah,
like I know for me it's like a total value seeking thing, where if I'm not working hard and like it's like I feel worthless if I'm not earning my own keep somehow, like be it art or jujitsu or spending time with my family or doing something that's really hard for me to just sit down and be like, I'm just gonna chill. Like I can't, because I feel like it's lazy.
I feel like it's lazy too. And I don't naturally just gravitate towards things to show the world that I'm a busy individual to get feedback. None of that stuff matters. It
Yeah.
is purely personal. If
Mhm.
I go to bed and I don't feel like I did enough, I don't sleep well. That's every single night.
It's
No
every night.
matter what I accomplish in a day, it's not enough.
Yeah.
And man, I think it might be partly my dad. He was a man of many hats. He could speak, a little bit of every language. He could play almost any musical instrument.
Mm,
Uh,
brilliant.
oh man, anybody who met that guy was like, whoa,
What was
you
his
know.
profession?
Well, he was an English professor.
Okay.
He had his doctorate in English,
Okay.
and he taught that all over the world. He lived in Africa for a long time teaching English, and
Oh, awesome.
met my mom in the Virgin Islands teaching guitar lessons. And I mean, he's been all over the world. He's seen it all, and he was a movie critic. So I got to meet a lot of movie stars growing up. That
Okay.
was really interesting. Like what he would do is fly to New York and Los Angeles. Once a week he did movie reviews on the television, uh, and would let people know, like, "Hey, we just checked this out, and here's an interview with Arnold Schwarzenegger." There he
Cool.
is with an interview, and they're talking about the new movie, and that was a thing. In school, I would always get asked
Hmm.
by teachers, "What'd your dad think of this movie?" It's like, I don't know. Watch his program.
Okay.
So he was a little bit of a local figure too,
Okay.
and he was just a collector of all sorts of ephemera. I've got a case at my shop full of human skulls, and they were all my dad's.
Okay.
uh, I wear a ring that I've worn since he passed away, and it's just a ring with a skull on it, and he wore that my entire life.
Oh,
Like
cool.
he was just naturally interested in everything, and he cast a large shadow. So I think, in his 80 years of being alive, he lived 3 lifetimes,
Yeah.
and he really crammed it in, and he was a genius. So when I carry on, I think, well, that was my influence and an example. And if I'm not turning things out either,
Right.
uh, it must be because of that. He was such a heavy influence on me and anybody who came to meet him. Um, so I think that's it. He
Yeah.
left some big shoes to fill.
Yeah. Sounds like a
And
super interesting guy.
oh man, he was so interesting. And so many people talk about writing books about him, and
Hmm.
um, yeah, he was something else, man. He had a lot going on, and
Tough to
you
measure
know,
up.
yeah, he used to be my Google. I would
Hmm.
be hanging out with friends as a kid. We'd be up late drinking, and oh, there's a weird word. Where'd that come from? Hey, Dad, it's
Right.
3 a.m. How you doing? He's like, oh, I'm just up reading. You know, hey, tell me where this word comes from, and he'd find out and he'd give us the answer. He was always the guy to rely on if I needed anything.
That's awesome.
Uh, and I think that's kind of what I want to be for people too. If you need something, I'm there. I want to be able to provide. And if I can't, I I don't shoot speculation too much. I like facts. So when people kind of give me a little, I don't know, maybe it could be this. I don't settle for that. It's let's find out exactly what it is so we can proceed, you know, and really know what we're talking about. And he was very much that guy. The information was there, and if he didn't have it, he made sure to find it and fact check it. So I think that's kind of where I am too. But it keeps me busy, keeps me
Yeah.
really busy.
Yeah.
So I don't know how to do it. I don't know where my balance is. I just, I catch a stride and I go for it, and I just keep on moving and moving and moving. But
How disciplined are you in your schedule to at least attempt to find balance? Because you have 2 kids, a wife, tattooing, you're drawing a ton, making art on your own, cars. So you've got a lot of interests going on. How do you schedule that in a practical daily sense?
that's tricky. I even right now, man, I'm kind of trying not to take deposits for tattoos anymore at the
Okay.
moment. I kind of pause on that, and then I'll pick back up when I make it through a tunnel. And I just like to not book out. I mean, I say too far, but I mean, right now I stay right about a year,
Okay.
because I feel like feast or famine. And I'd rather say yes to a project than say no, because it's an opportunity. And if somebody wants what I got, I feel blessed enough to be able to do it. I better say yes. And I've seen that kind of bury me a little bit. And I do get frustrated when I just stay in the tattoo lane for too long. I like to swerve.
Yep.
Working on cars really helps influence tattooing. Working on,
Yeah.
reverse glass pieces really influence tattooing. Tattooing is
Wait, hang
definitely
on. What is that? Oh, like etching?
the uh
What's
you
reverse
know
glass?
like, yes, in a sense, etching, you could there's a lot of techniques that you could do in it, but like reverse glass, do you know who Dave Smith is?
Yeah, I think so. Gold,
Ornamental
gold leaf
sign,
painting.
glass sign.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
So
Sign
another
painting.
forum, a real similar thing. Like I met Dave on a letterhead forum. I've always been into sign lettering, and I think
Okay.
that all comes from the graffiti stuff too. But
Right.
the one thing that was always super intriguing to me was reverse glass. It's
Yeah.
everything done backwards on the backside and using 24 karat gold.
Okay.
And
So when I was a kid, my mom was a sign painter.
oh, nice.
Back then, it was all just one shot on glass.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's awesome, man. And that's what I use too. I use One Shot or some sort
Okay.
of epoxy. Um, but yeah, so I met Dave. I went out to London and hung out with him, and
Right.
he and I collaborated on this piece of glass. And I ended up extending my trip there actually because we hit it off so well in person too. And he took me all over, showing me museums and
Awesome.
things, and it was a really good time. And that's like
And
one.
hang on, did you guys meet on Instagram?
No. We met on a letterhead forum, and it was
Letter.
actually called Letterheads.
Okay.
So that was before Instagram. Dave was actually, oddly enough, like nobody knew who he was because
I know him
it
from
was
Instagram.
all sign painters going to the sign painter forum. So it only drew in one crowd. There was one door, and the only way that it was tugging you through was
Yeah.
your interest in signage.
So same thing with Reed Street.
So
It was all tattooers. So
exactly, yeah. So
whoever
nobody else was really no
Yep.
reason to be there.
Right. Interesting.
So Dave is a phenomenal artist. He is at the pinnacle of what he does currently with this craft.
Yeah.
And I told him, I was like, Dave, you got to set up a Facebook. Oh, what's a Facebook? Oh, check it out, man. Everybody can kind of see it. You make posts, people will share it around. And he did that. And, he gained a lot of traction. He started getting the attention of people that wouldn't have otherwise seen him.
Right.
And then I told him about Instagram.
Why do you think he had so much traction in the tattoo scene?
Well, I think, I mean, were you a graffiti writer at all?
No, never.
No?
Around it a ton, but no.
Yeah, and I think that's kind of how you and I have some parallels. Is I think that we've kind of shared some similar friend groups too.
Yeah, a lot.
And through that, so all of that stuff, and ultimately, what got me too is I was a letter guy. I liked lettering and just form. And so when you go to these old pubs in London, they have like really nice, elegant lettering. And that class really translated over to graffiti in a sense, because one, it's just the alphabet.
Yeah.
And how can you abstract that? And then of course, how can you make it classy? Whereas, graffiti was just ultimately an urban, just that kind of appeal. It stayed very hip hop and very much in there. And it was like, well, how can we turn graffiti into elegance? And I think that's really where the draw was. Like, well, graffiti in a sense, in the way that we were doing it with aerosol, is so temporary. Whereas, you've got hieroglyphs and Egyptian writing and, that stuff lasts. And that's far more appealing to me. Even now, like I like to exist thinking what I'm doing is ancient. And I like to carry on that way. And I think, well, tattoos are just so disposable at this point, and they just won't last. And I really like the idea of creating something that can last a lot more. Granted, what I'm talking about is on glass, but it's gold, and gold lasts forever. And kind of crossing over that little transition. And Dave was on the other end of every question that I had when it was on this letterhead forum. So he and I would go back and forth, and, he'd see my lettering that I would put on there just on paper. I'd take a picture of it with my camera, upload it, and put it on there. And, hey, I'm so-and-so here. This is the stuff I'm doing. And it drew the attention of Dave a little bit. And his work was just, there was nobody else doing that,
Right.
Even in the hundreds of years of this stuff going on in England and in these pubs, he took it and amplified it. He was the steroids of what that craft needed. And, he single-handedly brought it back to life. It was almost extinct. And he kind of took it from this fellow named Rick Glosson. He's now gone. He's been passed away for, I think it was just an anniversary, maybe 15 years at this point.
Okay.
But,
also,
it was
English guy.
No, he was actually in the States.
Okay.
So that guy, so Rick Glosson, Noel Weber, and Dave Smith. Those were the three guys for me that just really just took my attention. and just fed my soul this stuff, and I just could not get enough of it. I mean, like I had a little laptop, and it was just the whole, I have folders of this stuff. Anything that I can get on this glass, I would just save it. And yeah, Dave was on the other end, and he and I made a connection, and I decided that I was going to make a trip out there, and we collaborated. He did one piece and I did one piece of the same thing, and we were just a one-on-one. And then, I put him on Instagram. He got on Instagram, and people started seeing him, and it intrigued other people as well. And then he started doing like group workshops, basically. So he would just get like, like get 4 people, 5 people, 8 people all at once. And he started doing it. So we're definitely starting to see that again. And that was primarily because he started using social media, Facebook, and then
it has
branching off, and
for sure.
What's it? Yeah. And he's been busy, man. He's taught a lot of people, and he and we still talk really often. And sometimes, I mean, it'd be on a daily for a month, and then we'll kind of switch off, and I'll be back on tattooing, and that's just where my brain is. But then when I get back on glass, it's like, oh, Dave, I came up with something. You're going to love this. And then he'll share his little inventions too, because it's really pretty endless. And if you could be a little scientist, you can come up with all kinds of little techniques to do with this stuff. And sharing is like, it's exciting. We all kind of light up like, oh, this has been going on for 300 years and we haven't seen anybody do this. And it's so simple.
So back to the tattoo side, where you're focused on kind of, in being a better version of who you were yesterday, and not necessarily like drawing in too many outside influences. Do you feel the same way when you're in that world, in the like glass, reverse glass, gold? Like, are you still trying to just stick with your thing, or are you pulling in more outside influences from the guys that you've listed?
I definitely, I find an inspiration from all of those guys. And it's, even if I hadn't looked at them in 10 years, the impact that it made on me from day one was just like, whoa, that seed was planted.
Yeah.
And growth has happened, undoubtedly. I mean, I don't want to veer too far off. You're asking me about balance and how do I do it and what I want to do, but it's truly infinite. You can just continue to build things. And when you're left to your own thoughts, it's enough, because I can come up with something all on my own. And at that point, it feels like a duty to share with these other people that ultimately made such an impact on me. I wouldn't be doing it if it wasn't for these people. And so I share this stuff with Dave all the time. And you know how it is. It might be similar to this geisha tattoo. It's like, look what I did. I invented this. Nah, this guy last November, he did it. But then I did it a year before that.
Right.
You run into these overlapping things that kind of reoccur, where you think that you sit down. I mean, you could spend hours pondering how you're going to approach a certain thing and concocting an experiment. And it could be a matter of the humidity in the air, like the things that you have to take into consideration. Yep. If I can get a humidity point to this and adjust it, you become a scientist a little bit, and you're in your own little laboratory. And most of the laboratory starts in your head, and you start conceptualizing, if I do this, but if I reduce the level of humidity and add a little bit of heat to this, and then maybe cook that, what kind of outcome can I get? So you hypothesize, you conduct an experiment, you collect data. Naturally, you want to share it because it's exciting. So I like to share it. And then when I do that, they're sharing information right back to me. So I really do feel like it's a symbiotic relationship there. Like, if I don't share this, then I'm not going to get more information on how to conduct this experiment even better. it's like tattoo talk. We
Yeah,
talk
yeah,
about
for sure.
what kind of tubes do you use, what black do you use, what needles do you use, blah blah blah.
So what I find
Machines.
vastly different between the things that I do with sculpture or printmaking and whatever and tattooing is that for me, tattooing's never been off. Like it's just on all the time. Like I might have
Right.
a couple days where I get some cancellations or something, but overall I tattoo Monday through Friday, 28 years. I don't really take time off. So that frequency makes it a lot easier for my mind to remember and learn process. Whereas when I'm jumping around with like resin sculptures or printmaking, things like nuances like humidity and stuff like that, nuance it affects paper, it affects all sorts of stuff, right?
Right.
And I have a harder time readjusting to that process when I haven't done it for a month. So
Oh, same. Yeah.
do you find that? Like, is it
Oh, yeah.
is
My
the
whole,
learning curve a lot harder with glass because you don't get to do it every day?
oh, yeah. I mean, so many of these things that I've done for years and years and years, it's not so second nature until you kind of grease the wheels a little bit and kind of get to rolling again. And then it's like, oh yeah, I'm relearning this. Hell, I was just clearing out some screens last night. I had turned on my exposure unit to I was gonna print some shirts, do some screen printing at the house. And I haven't had a whole lot of time to clear out these screens, reclaim them, and recode them. So I hired one of my buddies that he's kind of starting a screen printing thing. And I was like, hey, man, if I give you a stack of screens, can you clear them out for me and recode them for me and just bag them up and bring them back? So my money was well spent there. One, it's helping a
Yeah.
guy out. He's learning. Two, I'm available to do something to earn a living at. And three, I just cut one thing out of my process so I could be more effective. And then I got in there and I hadn't, burnt a screen in 2 years.
Yeah.
I started thinking, man, how long was I burning this at? I was exposing it for what was it, 5 minutes, 7 minutes? So I had to conduct the experiment again
Yep.
and take notes that I've already taken before and had written down somewhere that I couldn't find.
So redundant.
But yeah, but then after you do it, you're like, oh yeah, here I am. I'm right back at home again. This is a comfortable place. This is another safe place for me to create. And it all starts to just come right back, But yeah, I have to start over. Even my work environment, like where I am right now, I tend to do my taxes here. I tend to watercolor there. In the other room, I work on my glass. The other room around that corner, I work on screen printing.
Yep.
And, I have these little environments set up for each little craft and they get dirty, And so it's like, okay, I got to start over. And just cleaning up the area, you'll see a certain brush or a certain, oil-based something. And you're like, oh yeah, all of these things are starting to click. These are all ingredients for this recipe. And I forgot about that important ingredient until I just cleaned up the work area to start fresh again,
Yeah.
Same thing with cars,
Yeah.
like
totally.
a lug nut. You could take a lug nut off. It's the same story every time, right or left, But then it gets a little deeper and deeper, and you're like, oh, I forgot. How did I do this? Oh, yeah. Just get in there and break an egg real quick, and you'll figure it out. But as far as that balance goes, I'm not great at it. I do find that I do a lot of drawing right on the skin. Most of what I do, I'm just drawing right on the body. And under my own opinion and a lot of other people's opinions, they may differ, but sometimes I feel like, well, I dropped the ball on that. I probably should have done a lot more pre-drawing for that. And I do a lot of doodling. I've got sketchbooks. I still draw in a sketchbook regularly, but I don't render things as much as I used to because I'm managing more things. But then when I get into it and it's like, I got a project here, I want to see it through, then I really buckle down and I get into it and I just shove other things out of the way. It's like, well, the car thing can wait. This sign thing can wait. And then I really dig in. But ultimately, man, I think, of it all, the sign stuff, man, I really want to do that. And I really want to bring tattooing into it. Like I've got back pieces that I have drawn up. I've got back pieces that I've drawn up that I haven't done. And I think, how nice would that be to do like a full size back piece, but do it all in gold and paint and all of these etching effects and everything in reverse on glass.
Cool.
And it's like, I haven't seen anybody do that.
That'd be
It doesn't mean
super
that it doesn't exist. You
Right.
know, it's like the geisha. It could be out there and I just am not seeing it, but we've both had the same ideas because it seems pretty simple. Same thing in the car world. You know, I've never seen anybody in the car world bringing that kind of artwork into it, and it seems to cater very well. I mean, it's a close parallel there, those two things, working in this gold stuff on glass. I mean, you could do that in car windows and
Sure.
and everything else, and I've never seen anybody do it. And I still haven't done it over all of these years because I'm too busy tattooing
Right.
to really step into there. It's like, if I'm going to be over here, I need to turn off tattooing for a while so I could be 100% available to this.
How often
And
do
I
you
think,
tattoo right now?
I mean, I go through periods where I might take a week off, but I'm still there at the shop working on things, working on projects for appointments. And I'm also just managing a business. So, you know, I need to be there. I want to be there. I like that environment. I really love everybody that I'm working around. And when I'm not there, it's, you know, I think I'd rather be there most of the time.
Yeah.
But I'm 5 days a week over there.
Okay.
And, you know, and then tomorrow I'll go and grab the books and do the weekly books. So it's like I'm working 7 days a week for that thing.
Yeah.
But sometimes if I can manage to just block out a few days for my schedule, I'll just say, okay, there's 4 days there that I'm just going to leave blank and I'm not going to schedule anybody on it. And then when those 4 days come and I see it coming on the horizon, I'm already planning to be in a different studio or work on a vehicle.
Right.
So I do have to kind of make up time for that. So my schedule is pretty inconsistent with its consistencies. I'm tattooing a lot, but I'm never really doing more than one tattoo a day. And it's mostly bigger stuff. So I just, you know, I'll work from 2 to 7 minimum. But
Okay.
most of the time, if I've got somebody traveling, I'll work. You know, my kids go to bed around closing time anyway. So, and I'm with them all morning. So I do that from while my wife works. I'm with my 2 kids from, you know, 6 to noon. And then I go into the shop and kind of get set up. And then I'll work from 2 to whatever at night.
It's a lot to manage when they're little, man.
Dude, I mean, I'm just now starting to get sleep. And that's kind of that bittersweet that I was talking about. Like, Chris and I were talking about it, just like, whoa, like this is a lot and it's a lot of pressure. And I'm not only managing an infant and a toddler, but I have adults that I also have to manage.
More toddlers.
Well, you know,
No, I know.
So it's still management.
Yeah.
You have to steer the ship, right? And you have to be present. And when you feel so divided, I mean, I tell these guys, when I come to work for me is vacation. I don't need a vacation from work. That's where I can sit and I can create and I can focus without any interruptions. That to me is like my own little paradise. Mm-hmm. My kids are my paradise too. So
it's different.
Your
hat changes. It's a different hat.
Yeah, right. Exactly. And man, you know, there was a period I was highly irritable, sleep deprived. And, you know, I talk about my alone time on the road. It's 15 minutes. You know, the only places that I go now are to the grocery store, to work, and home. Yeah. And there's nothing else, you know, unless I'm going out and getting supplies for the shop. But that's my little 15 minutes of bliss and comfort. But really, I mean, the slice of pie that I get is at the end of the day, and it's the smallest slice that gets divvied out from the pie. I have to give this attention to this, to this, to this, to this. And at the end of the day, I've got this sliver for me. And I'm trying to stay awake to utilize it before I pass out and start all over again, you know, feeding a baby in the middle of the night, helping my wife with that stuff.
Yeah.
And
I mean, I am in a sense, I feel really lucky now being older, looking back on the benefits of having kids super young. Now, there's some huge negatives also, um, but I had endless amounts of energy, no, no money, no knowledge, no wisdom, no, so it's way more complicated having a kid when you're 21 because you're still a kid. And I just, my oldest son, he has 2 kids now, so I'm in the grandfather status. And the thing that's so sweet about that I've just kind of started to notice is, and everybody always says the greatest thing about grandkids is you can give them back. And it's true, but it's a lot deeper than that, where it's the greatest thing about being a grandparent is like looking at this thing that you're responsible for. Like its life wouldn't exist without you. And it's family at like the deepest level of this thing is 25% my DNA.
oh,
And
it's a true miracle. It's
yeah,
insane.
absolutely. And by default, you have to be older because you had kids. You're definitely going to be wiser and probably calmer. And like, there's all these things that come into it, and it's not your responsibility. Like, it's your kid's responsibility to take care of that thing. And it's your joy to just have an extra family. Like, it's an extra soul in your family, but none of the insomnia pressure of up all night with this thing sick, and I don't have any money, and I don't know how I'm going to feed it, and I got to go to work tomorrow. And like all of that, none of that exists with being a grandparent. If your kid's doing his job, which mine is, so I'm lucky. Now, of course, if your kid's not doing his job, then very easily that responsibility could fall on you as the grandparent.
Oh, and I see it all the time with people
I haven't
neglecting their child.
experienced it, so
Yeah. And how old are you now?
I'm 47.
47.
Yeah.
So
So my oldest is turning 26 in a few months, and I've he has one kid that's 2.5 and one that's 6 weeks old.
wow. Yeah.
And then
So
I have 4 kids, so 25, 21, 19, and 14. But they're all pretty self-sufficient at this point.
yeah, the 14, male or female?
Boy, yeah.
Boy. They're all boys?
Nope, my 19-year-old's daughter.
Yeah.
Yep.
Boy, I keep getting I've got a boy and a girl. And man, my daughter, she's been giving me hell. I mean, now we're like we're on a good path, I'm trying to be a good dad as best as I can be for her, no yelling, none of that, I don't hit or any of that stuff. But man,
Right.
just out of nowhere, she'd be like, go away and never come back. And like she could hurt herself. And I'm there to just like
Yep.
show attention. Like, what happened? Go away and never come back. She told me she wished I was dead.
Oh man.
It's like, you're 4 years old.
Oh,
How is this built in? Like,
mm-hmm.
I don't know where you're learning it. I don't get it, but it's just built in. And man, that was really shaping my days at work pretty harshly, because I'm with them by myself all morning, and she's treating me like
My only
total
advice
hell.
on that, man, is don't let it eat at you too much, because in hindsight, you'll go through so many different phases that they're different people every few weeks, months for
Oh, and
sure,
that's
few
yeah,
months.
and I'm dealing with the sweet one now. Like, she just
Yep.
overnight she
Yep.
flipped her game, but it was like 2 weeks. She treated me, man,
Yep.
it was hard. It was really hard.
They do that their whole lives, and it starts
Yeah.
to like the peaks start to kind of smooth out when they're a little older. But they're definitely not. It's a moving target, man. They're different people all
Yeah.
the time, and so you have to, especially. I mean, I would say, and I don't want to be too critical on here because my kids watch this, right? So there's teenage years where you just have to realize that, like, Monday to Tuesday, they could be a totally different person, where you're like, oh, wow, I have to readjust to what you are now, because what you are right now is not who you were yesterday. and it's just like 180-degree turn. Like it happens pretty often.
Well,
Buckle out.
you know,
Buckle down.
my buddy and I on our drive this morning, we were just talking about that stuff. You know, now that I've got my son, he's 2 years old, he's sleeping through the night, and I'm gaining more sleep. And this is what I was talking about with Chris. It's like, well, I'm getting more sleep, but now that I'm getting it, I feel like I'm wasting more of my time because I'm just sleeping.
Yeah.
I should be awake doing something because I ultimately gained more waking hours while I was sleep deprived, but I wasn't just awake twiddling my thumbs or watching TV. Like I found things to do, especially in the quiet of the night. You know, I wasn't bothered. I didn't have to do anything else. But
yeah, I mean, it's tough for me because I have really bad insomnia. This week's pretty rough. I think I probably slept about 5 hours like in the last 7 days.
That's not good. Yeah.
No, it's really, really bad. But it becomes a thing where there's nothing you can do about it. And if I could sleep, man, sign me up. Like I want to sleep. I just can't. I can't shut it off.
I mean, what keeps you up? Is it projects? Is it worry, concern?
No, I don't do that. No, it's I would argue it's probably chemical or something. I've had a couple sleep studies done. Yeah, it's nothing. I mean, I've had it my whole life. And I go through waves that are really, really bad. Like my 30s were really bad. Like I just slept 90 minutes a night for 10 years. And
I bet you got a lot done though.
I got a lot done, but because I refuse to waste the hours if I'm awake anyways, right? So if I have to be up, I will get work done. I'll try to be productive, even if it's like sometimes I'll just go out into the garage and, you know, get stuff done out there or whatever. My house is pretty small, so I can't do a ton at night because I'll keep everybody else up. So it's drawing or it's, you know, it's got to be something kind of quiet. It's not like I can mow the lawn at 2 a.m, right?
Sure.
So yeah. I'll try to get some of that stuff done rather than waste my hours. Like I know a lot of people with insomnia, they'll just sit up all night watching TV and I won't do that. I'll try to do it to where if I am up all night and I can't sleep, at least in the morning, I can kind of have something to show for it where it was like, well, yeah, I got this painting done, or, you know, I did something productive with my insomnia. But if the option was there to sleep, I will take it. And so I do know other people that are really, really disciplined about not having a lot of sleep. And I don't know if I side with that. Like, I think if your body will let you sleep 8 hours, dude, sleep 8 hours because there's so many medical benefits from getting long sleep. But if you can't, you can't. Like, you know what I mean? Your hands are kind of tied.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, you know, I watched this documentary about some Chinese fella that has mastered, you know, I forget what it was. Maybe it was just like intermittent sleeping, but where I think maybe he would just be awake for 5 hours and sleep for 30 minutes and then 5 hours and 30 minutes and 5 hours and 30 minutes. It's just how he went about his life.
Yep.
And
I usually that 90 minutes is about the most I can get. And when I take little power naps, they're usually under 15 minutes.
And it does something for you though.
Yeah. I mean, I'll take everything I can get.
Yeah. Wow.
But I mean, if I could sleep for 8 hours, by all means, I would. I've never had an alarm clock. You know what I mean? Like it's not really an option.
You know, I've never really had it either. If I know that I have to be up somewhere, my mind won't allow me to really get that rest anyway. I'll wake up on the dot.
Yeah, I mean, I will definitely set alarms on my phones, especially when I'm traveling and stuff. But if I set it for 6, I'll wake up at 4. Like,
you know,
I'm up anyways. So
yeah, the anticipation keeps me there. Man, Henry Lewis, he is a bit of an insomniac too.
I think it's pretty common in our field.
I would think so too, you know, and that's why I asked you if it's worry or what, because a lot of times for me, especially since I've had kids. Everything has changed since I've had kids. So the past almost 5 years, mortality is
Yeah.
bigger and heavier than it's ever been.
Yeah.
Whereas, I definitely live fast with a lot of things, the things that I was into, especially graffiti, going out and putting myself out on a limb many times
Yeah.
and knowing this could be it. But it's
Yeah.
like, whatever. If it's going to kill me, I'm going to do it because this is what I need to do right now to satisfy whatever needs there is. But now I'm trying my hardest to stay alive, and
Yep.
that keeps me up at night. I quit drinking.
Yep. Me
I
too.
thought, well, I'm not going to drink anymore, and I'm fat. I went on a vacation and saw a photo of me, and I thought, what the hell? That's
Mhm.
me.
Yeah.
Wow. And that was it.
I
It was
hate
like,
this podcast for that reason.
yeah, I
Every time
bet.
I log in, I'm
Yeah.
just like, oh, damn it, I'm old.
There's my mug. Yeah. uh, but yeah, man, I at that point, I'm not drinking anymore and lost some weight. I started working out, lost some more weight, and trying to maintain that now while being a dad, while trying to be an artist, while being into cars and signs and so on and so on and so on. And it's a lot, but man, at night, I think about savings. How much do I have for retirement? What's retirement really look like? If I buy this car, am I actually going to be able to flip it
Yeah.
with some good net value at the end of it? Uh, because I could put this in a high yield savings account and accrue some interest on it that will compound. So it's like,
And that stuff will keep you up because
oh yeah,
your brain's cycling through it all.
man, it's strategy. You really, and that's how it is with everything. This glass stuff, if I'm on that at the moment, I can't sleep because I'm conceptualizing something and I'm adding up formulas and there's reduction and,
Yep.
it's math. I'm
So
conducting an
in
experiment in my head. And
that sense, yes, that is what keeps me up. It's not worry as much as it is management. Like my
yeah,
brain's sorting through information constantly. Um, but it's not worry. Like I operate at a pretty standard level of peacefulness all the time.
yeah,
But it is just like it's just ideas. And it doesn't go away because it could be a landscaping project. It could be there's a million things, and there's just always something. And I think it's probably the ADHD thing. And it's like you said, it's a blessing and a curse. I don't want rid of it. Um, it's just kind of always present.
yeah. It's unfortunate, man. I like to carry on conversations, even this stuff, I worry that my mind will grab a nugget and drift off on it. And then I'll float back to this conversation we're having, and I've missed the past 2 minutes.
Yeah, this happens.
Luckily,
I'm,
it hasn't happened yet. But like even my wife, when I come home after a day's work, I know she's going to catch me up on things. And, what'd you guys do with the kids? What's happening? What needs to be handled? Do I need to stop and get anything before I come home? When I start to face her at the end of the day and the day has already been long, like I feel terrible, but sometimes she'll be talking to me for 5 minutes and I haven't heard a single thing, even though I've locked eyes the entire time.
yep.
And it's because I'm sorting the leftovers of the day to like make sure the T's have been crossed, the I's have been dotted, like even some nights, man, I'll just stay up worried about some of the people that work at my shop.
Yeah.
Are they saving enough? Are they making enough? Are they booked enough? Are they happy? I want everybody to be all of those things if that's what they want,
Yeah.
and it's a lot of living souls that I have to sort through in my brain. And that's kind of what I was talking about too, is like when I was just sleep deprived, highly irritable, and after dealing with two children, dealing with grown-ups and managing their lives, and here I am, I need to show up in tattoo and be creative, and I can't
Yep.
because I'm sorting through the little hurdles that keep getting placed in front of me. And I was just ready. At that point, I was like, I want to get rid of this shop. I'm done. And I actually presented to them my two longest relationships that I've had at that shop and with some friends. I just say, I know this place is important to you, but I think I'm ready to let it go. We just had a 10-year celebration at this spot, and our lease is up at the end of the year. And I think we could leave on a high note. And I was ready, mentally, I was really ready. I was exhausted. I was tired of managing too many skillets.
Yep.
And I just said, I don't think that I'm doing this effectively anymore and efficiently by any means. And ultimately, I feel like I'm letting down the people that are closest to me. And I don't want to be that person for you guys. And ultimately, having that conversation with these two guys, Ellen and Jimmy, they both said, we don't want old souls to be done. We love it here. Maybe we can just do another 3 years. And it's like, as much as I like hearing that they love what we've created.
Yeah. Right.
I'm telling you that I feel I'm done.
Yeah.
I'm more than out of fuel. Like I'm back there. I need a tow truck to bring me to this conversation. Like
Yep.
I'm just out.
Yep.
And,
so what do you do to
they
push through,
kept me
man?
in.
Like, what do you do to keep doing it? Like, where do
You
you get the
grind.
fuel?
You don't give yourself a choice. So
Right.
you commit, and then you're forced to show up. There's no way to back out.
Right.
And I think that's who I am. I will always show up, and I will, I'll lose some things to get there, but I did. And ultimately, I signed another 3 years. And man, I had been struggling through it up until about 6 months ago, where I really kind of started getting sleep again. And I started to kind of fuel up, and I made some time to do some other stuff, which really nurtured my brain and really helped my tattooing again. And,
What was that?
just taking time. Like I took a month off and I just worked on some glass stuff.
Nice.
And that's solitude. I come down to my basement and I do it, and it's not a collaboration with a client. I
Yep.
don't have any input. I'm not touching another human being. I don't have to talk to you. I put on podcasts or an audiobook,
Yep.
and I pay attention to that for 6 hours out of the day. And then I go up and I put my kids to bed with my wife, and I call it a night. Like
Yep.
that was work, but it was by myself. I was on my own island, and that's something that tattoo does that really kind of takes your energy, is when you're working on another human being. Like I just had a guy working on a back piece, this fella from Chicago, and it was a 3-day in a row session. And yeah, I'm doing the job, but I feel like he's doing all the work. Like he has to show up every
Yeah.
night. He has to reset his brain, and then he has to endure this thing with me that I'm doing to him.
Yep.
And I also have to know that I'm giving it to him and that he's requested it. And furthermore, he's paying me for a product.
Yeah.
So we both have to show up, and those energies are together. It's a collaboration. It's an ultimate collaboration. And man, that wears you out. At the end of the day, he says, wow, you did a great job. And I'm thinking, wow, man, you did a great job.
Right.
Like you did all the work, and
it's a team effort, man.
it is a team effort, man. And that is so exhausting when you have all of these solo projects. And I think that's kind of what I'm talking about. Like being able to do these back pieces that ultimately could take 5 years in some cases.
Yeah, totally.
And that's
I got one I'm working on right now. I started in 2002.
Dude, and then how do you get back into that? Like, so what? Do you redo the old stuff? Like you got to tap into a state of mind.
Yeah, because things happen. You know what I mean? Like people get halfway through a project, they get a DUI, they get pregnant, they get cancer, and then 10 years later, they're okay again. And it's like, well, what are you gonna do? Like not show up? Like you have to show up because it's a person. It's not some art you can discard, right? Like
sure. Yeah. And there's
a person, and you're responsible for making them feel good in their meat suit they're walking around in. So it's a big deal.
For sure. I get that too. And it's hard, like if you're doing water on a back piece in 2000. What did you say? 2002?
I started in 2002. Yeah.
Yeah. So clouds, water,
Right.
like
Yeah.
all of that stuff. Now you've got to learn how to draw your 2002 version. And
Yep.
that could be hard in 1 year's time,
I think
like,
it's actually impossible. And so you just do the best thing you can do.
yeah, you try to just match it up. It's hard, man, but
It's super hard.
I'm much better at that when I can remove myself from that process and focus on solo stuff. I could do a back piece on glass in 2 weeks.
Yeah.
And because I don't have bathroom breaks with a guy, or we need to eat some lunch, we need to power back up because we're going to truck through 9 more hours because you're traveling
Yep.
and
Right.
I'm here. Let's do it. Like
Yeah.
I start and stop. And
Do you find that you lose energy like with the responsibility of entertaining your client and coaching them through a painful process?
uh
Or do you just kind of abort and not even care? Because
I
I've
think
had
it's
tattooers.
situational. I think it depends on the client. Some clients just they need their personal space, and sometimes they'll come in with the earbuds and just like
Mm, right.
watch something on their laptop. If their head's in a hole on a massage table, like this particular fella I'm just did 3 days with, he likes to poke his head in the hole and have his laptop and watch stuff.
Is he a
And
tattooer?
no, he's not.
Okay.
No, he's a collector.
Yeah.
He's got a lot of really really nice tattoos. Um, but he kind of sticks to his own, which means I find myself kind of chatting it up with coworkers in the shop, and we
Mm,
kind of yell around and have jokes and things while he's just in his
yeah.
little space. Then there's some people that are tattooers and they want to ask a ton of questions,
Mm-hmm.
and I want to return a bunch of questions. So it's really Q&A for a couple of days. Most back pieces now, when I set it up, I pretty much demand doing 2 days,
Okay.
um, especially if they're traveling. It sounds a little scary to people, and then they realize, like, Mr. 3 Day used to be Mr. 2 Days, and he was terrified of that.
Right.
And now he wants to set up 4 days because you go home with so much work done,
Yeah.
and it really is just the same. It's the same as the first day,
Yeah.
but um, when you get these tattooers in and they're getting 2 days, you get excited because you want to know what projects they're working on. It's a little show and tell. You've got questions. What do you use? How do you do your black and grays? That's like always the biggest uh, topic of conversation, I feel like. Gray washes. What needles are you using? And I love that stuff. I love having that conversation. I share all of that. I'm very open. I like to see what people do with it. Uh, and ultimately it will teach me something too. It's like, you've taken what I've given you and I see what you're doing with it. Now I've got questions on how you're doing that so I could apply it to my work. So it's good. And like some of my better friends I've met through tattooing, and it's because of those conversations on the towel or on the table. Uh, and I really get to know these people. I get to learn what their family's like, and if they
Mhm.
have kids, like you're talking about. And so it's really nice to have them come in and just really give my time to them and really take some of their time in return. It's nice. So it all just depends on the client. I do find too, it's like, if people are pretty regular and they're getting bigger pieces, sometimes they just need to get into the groove. We just caught up last month. Not a lot's happened since then, and it only seems like a week's gone by.
Mm.
So, it depends on what I'm really into at the moment. There's times where I don't look at car shit for like 2 months. And then it's like, spring's happening. I know I'm going to open garages and wash some things off and go to these local cruises and meets. And then I find like I'll just put on YouTube of the recent car show or the cruise that happened on Van Nuys in California. Like I'm pretty up on that stuff. Like, this cruise or this little meet, I want to see it. And now everybody records everything, so I could just catch it. So I'll just put that stuff on silent and tattoo. And
Okay.
as I'm tattooing, I'll look over and see something like, oh, cool, yeah. Or I'll put on movies depending on
Okay.
who the client is, and it's a good way to keep track of time too.
Yeah.
Like, we just watched this movie. I play Akira a lot
Okay.
because visually I don't need to know what's going on. I could just
Right.
look over there and be like, amazing, and get back to tattooing.
Right.
And it gets me pumped up on just tattooing, or I'll watch interviews. I did some of this and had one earbud in and listen to some of these things. So it all just depends on who it is. I'm not that guy that's like, all right, your time starts now. The earbuds go in and you're just a piece of meat, which I see a lot of
Yeah.
with people. And I try not to judge it because
I,
everybody creates their own space.
yeah.
Like,
I've heard a lot of people talk about being bummed by that. Um, like I've definitely had a lot of clients come into my studio and talk about how they got tattooed elsewhere and that person had earbuds in or headphones on while they're, and they, I mean, over and over and over, people complain about how, what a flat situation it was, like ultimately most people don't want to go to a studio and just be a product, you know.
yeah,
Um,
I
but I
definitely
know
find
like
that
some people love it, like some people love doing it.
that's it. I just kind of follow the lead of the client. It's
Yeah,
like ultimately you're coming to me because you want something that I have to
yeah,
offer. Thank you so much. How would you like to proceed? Because I'm available. I'm available to talk. I want to know your dog's name. I want to know what kind of projects you're working on too,
yeah,
because
right.
I stand to learn something new. Like, what do you do for a living? Ah, you're a lawyer. Let's talk about some of your cases. I love that stuff.
Yeah,
You do landscaping. What kind of landscaping?
right.
I think that's far better than muting that whole situation.
I mean, I think
So,
for me, it's the only reason why I get enjoyment out of tattooing anymore. It's not that I don't love the process of tattooing people, but I like the fact that it's people. Like I like getting to know them and getting vulnerable with them. And I have a private studio, so it's just me and the client. There's no one else in the room, so that opens up all sorts of conversations.
and how long have you been a private deal now? I mean, that's probably what, 5 years now, four
Now
or
about
five?
2.5.
Oh, really? Okay.
But even the old studio, like the last one, we all had our own rooms, so I might work. I mean, I sometimes I wouldn't see the other guys for what seemed like years. I would only know what the other guys in the studio were even working on because of Instagram.
Wow.
Like I wouldn't
That's,
we wouldn't see him at all because part of it's just the nature of the studio and having. I mean, we just had private rooms, so if you
well,
have a
your
private
studio was
room,
set up well that way too, right? Because it was like a house, right? So it already had individual rooms, correct?
yep, it already had individual rooms, and if you have individual rooms, most of your clients want the door shut. They just do, and so we just shut the doors, and everybody just works in their room, and it worked great. It was fine. You know what I mean?
You
Like
know,
we weren't the kind of studio where we all were like, comrades in the hang out every day sort of thing, which has benefits and it has some disadvantages. You know what I mean?
yeah.
So, when I worked, but all the shops I worked at in California were open room. Um, yeah, I did. I think at the end of the day, I enjoyed that more. I think I got more out of it as far as, learning and growth and camaraderie and, you know, um, I don't know, feeling like a family. Some of that comes with age too. I was young. So working in open studios was super fun in my early 20s. But so at this point, I feel like I've worked alone for quite a long time.
It's wild. My first two shops were room situations. And I found when we weren't tattooing, we'd just be leaning up against the door frame of somebody else's room, having conversations with the client and the tattooer.
Yeah,
Uh,
absolutely. And that
and then,
happened a lot, but most of us were so busy that it just didn't happen that often. But
yeah,
when it did, it was great. Yeah.
yeah, I feel like I stand to flourish when I'm around seeing other people tattooing. Like right now, most of the clients, I feel like they're just joining the party because the new shop, it was a completely open
Mm-hmm.
floor plan. I knocked every wall out of that joint. I opened up the ceilings and I just turned it into a huge box, an open air box. So we could all be tattooing and a client could walk through the door. It could be a walk in and we could all just be conducting business, talking to them while we're tattooing.
Yep. I love that.
And
I love that setting. Yeah.
yeah, I really, really like that. And I would never want to go back to a room setting. And then, I see other guys and I'm hearing your deal. It's like you only know what they're working on because they posted it on Instagram. And I feel like, wow, what an opportunity that seems to have been lost a little bit. It's
Mm-hmm.
like you get the product, but you don't get the process. And the process is the most important thing to launch yourself forward a little bit, just a conversation about it. When I got tattooed by Chris Brand, just the conversations about tattoos, I went home and I was a better tattooer,
Mm-hmm.
and it was like, man, I've been to so many places where I've done like private studio guest spots and you just don't get that unless your client is a tattooer. And I think that's like the strong benefit of being able to have that kind of collaboration. If you're tattooing a tattooer, there's going to be all kinds of fruit there to squeeze and get some information. But
Yep. So
um,
the way I see it panning out in my daily life now is I feel like it's way more beneficial for the clients that I have. Most of them are doing huge projects, and I think they get a lot out of the one-on-one process of working on their bodysuit or work. Like they come in every week sometimes and sit pretty long hours, and I know they get a lot out of it. For them personally, so that's like the benefit is me being in a private setting. I think they're just more vulnerable and more at ease, and their experience overall with getting large work, I think they're leaving with a much better um, memory of the situation versus some of the other studios I've worked at. So that's like the benefit to it. But that's just more like me feeling like I'm feeding someone else, right? I don't feel like I get fed a whole lot because I'm not working with other artists. And so that's like the drawback is like
oh yeah,
I
yeah.
feel isolated because it's me almost playing therapist or something. Like not really, that's taking it a little too far, but
Well, I mean, I think a client in that situation, that's kind of what they're going for. So maybe
yeah,
not too far. If they know that
probably
there's a
more
door and it's
it's probably
intimate,
yeah, I feel like it's probably more like me coaching them than it is being their therapist, but it's sometimes exhausting. You know what I mean? Like
well,
I don't
it's so one-sided.
yeah,
Yeah.
it
You're
really
just you're the giving tree with no limbs left at the end of the day sometimes.
yeah, that's how I feel most of the time. So I'm in a situation where I have a pretty big studio, and as much as I feel like for whatever reason right now I'm supposed to work alone, I'd love to not. You know what I mean? Because sometimes it's just like, ah, man, here I am again, just alone. And so it's whatever. I roll with it as it unfolds. But if it changed tomorrow and all of a sudden there's some great tattooer to work with, man, like I would change my structure in a heartbeat.
Well, I would imagine that opportunity is there at any moment you decide. A lot of people would love to work with you.
Cool. Have them send me an email. I'm ready. It's I think not. I think like I think there's a lot of people. I mean, maybe Florida's weird too. So I mean, there is that, right? Like I don't live in San Francisco anymore.
It's a big difference between the two, huh?
Yeah. I mean, I think tattooing is just different in Florida for sure. Um, but yeah, I mean, if some tattooer popped up who's no, like inspirational, like they're an inspirational figure to be around. They're positive. They're maybe probably a little older, a little more settled in, like whatever. Yeah, I mean, I'd love it. But most of those guys are
Let's
settled.
talk about that.
Like, you want to move to Florida and work with me? Like, dude, I'd hire you in a heartbeat. But you're not moving to Florida, and you got your own thing going. And so that's kind of what it seems to boil down to most of the time. Is most
Right.
of the people that I'd really want to work with and be around, they're just everybody's busy. everybody's busy and they already have their thing. They're not scurrying looking for a place to work. The people that tend to be scurrying for a place to work around here, that's not what I want to work with. Like that's the problem. So I'm a little pickier about who I work with.
If you had that choice now, I was talking to my buddy Joaquin about this. Like, if I had the choice to go anywhere and work in a certain studio around certain people, who would that be? And of course, there I forget what it was. Tim Biedron did an interview with
the Canadians.
Yeah. What is it called? So you're a big shot, or so
you think you're a big deal? I think
that's it. Yeah. So
I'll get on this.
He did one there, and then they ask at the end of this deal, who's your top 5? I think it was tattooers who you admire. Dude, mind blown. Tim mentioned me in one of his top 5. And I'm thinking, well, hell, I didn't pay this guy. What's going on here? This is nuts, because that dude is so insanely talented.
Yeah, he's the best.
Of all the people that you can pick out, and I'm sure if he was asked the same question, he'd have a different 5 to unravel, but he had a really good 5, and I just happened to be along in that list. And that's how I found out about that podcast. And I thought about it, and I thought, well, if I got hit with that 5, who would it be? Who would be my 5? To limit it and then to expand to it is just as challenging. Right. Because, like, I love the people I work around. I am truly blessed to have who I have at my shop. And I've gone through some serious talent, but they were assholes or too ego heavy or whatever it is. I mean, you know how it is, like, to find what's 100%. Perfect. Yeah. Like, you don't have to be a great artist, but your personality is good. Like, things will even out a little bit, whatever it is. But, I thought about that, and I just thought, man, that's really hard, because there's 100 places I'd like to work. And at the same time, which one would be the most beneficial for me? And I'll name drop right now. I was thinking Luke Atkinson. It's like, I would really like to go to Luke Atkinson's shop, work there, talk to him about cars, get some of his broad history of people that were very much like major figureheads for me. Yeah. And inspirations.
He hit me up last night on Instagram and gave me like a thumbs up just randomly, because he pops up randomly and does that. And it's just like, man, he's like the greatest person to get a thumbs up from, because it's just like, he's an absolute legend. And he's just
it's things like
guy. He's such a sweetheart. He's so good. And it's
just so good.
And that was actually my reaction last night. Is I've been off Instagram for like almost 4 months, and I signed back on a couple of days ago. And then for whatever random reason, Luke just goes through, and he complimented something from like years ago. And it's just like, all right, yeah, that's where this is worth it. Cause like, I got a little like kind of thumbs up from a old buddy in Germany. It's like, yeah, that's awesome. Like,
see, that's it. I've never met that guy, and he bought an original drawing from me out of nowhere. Yep. He just sent me a package with all of these books.
He's so great.
It's insane. He got Mick to sign a book for me. Yep. And I was looking for another one. I had one, and it got completely water damaged. And I thought, damn it, I have to have another one of these books for my library. It's a must. Yeah, well, I can't see.
The Gold Dragon.
Yeah. So I was re-looking for that, and in the conversation that that's it. Yes. Yeah. Anybody watching this, find a way to get that, because that paved the way to so many of these people that we can consider peers.
Yeah, totally.
And to me, I got recognized by Luke. And I didn't wave him down. Yeah. It was just a platform. It was a portfolio, and I put it up there, and he was drawn towards it and bought an original piece of artwork from me, which opened up a line of communication. And, I got to let him know, like, hey, man, like, this is a big deal for me. This is unsolicited, and it couldn't make me feel like I've accomplished something more than I feel now by your recognition. And I didn't try to flag you down or anything. You just found my work and it spoke to you. And now there's a response. And I am completely humbled by this. And if it weren't for Instagram,
Yeah.
what's the likelihood? I don't know. Maybe by association. And then even that becomes like, for my ego at least, removes something there. It's like, oh, well, I know Phil and Phil knows Luke. Therefore, Luke sees me. I feel like you're a component to that. And it kind of takes the fizz out a little bit, you know?
I don't know if there's a way to backtrack any of that, though. That's just in your head, you know?
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
absolutely. And I get in my head about that. And that keeps me up at night. It's stupid, arbitrary things that just don't matter. But there they are. They live and they fester and they turn into something and then dissolve. But ultimately, before I go off on that, and we have another episode, Luke Atkinson, he is somebody that I feel like a lot of tattooers don't know who he is, and he's one of the most important people in tattoo and how it exists now, that these carbon copies are coming off of a copy of a copy of a copy, and nobody knows where it came from in these younger generations. You know, I'm a bit younger than you. I haven't tattooed as long as you, but I still caught that. I'm 43.
Okay.
And like Tintin, he was a big one for me, you know, back then. Tintin, Luke, Mick, obviously, Philip Liu, you know, all of these people were these, what I would consider a pioneer, even though, you know, tattoo has existed far longer than these guys.
I mean, I play this game with tattooers quite often, and Philip's the first one I go to.
Every time, no doubt. Same here.
Yeah, and it's shocking to me how many people have no idea who he is. And I just cannot wrap my head around it.
It's so sad.
It doesn't make any sense to me. It's like, how would you not know? I had this talk with a client yesterday, and it was just like, man, I mean, the whole family is legendary. Like, how are you a tattooer and you don't know? And it's just like, man, because the younger dudes, you know, like the 26-year-old tattooer that's been tattooing for 8 years, right? That's been around, that's done some stuff. He's been exposed to so much stuff that it's hard for them to even put a name to any of the work anymore because of what they've been exposed to. It's just not like I mean, I don't know about you, but for me, I started getting into it in 92, 93. And there wasn't that much to get exposed to. And Philip was one of the first people I ever got exposed to. So it's like his work looked vastly different than everyone, you know?
Well, before the Instagram or the internet in general, for the most part, we had books, right? And so if you published a book, that's who was tattooing.
Yeah.
And if you looked at a magazine and there was 5 people in it, that's who was tattooing.
Yeah.
Like, of course, we knew that there was the greater pool of people swimming around, but the ones that had impact were the ones that rose to the top, that had features. And
but we were never distracted by like social media, but also television and, you know, all of the other avenues that people have grown up into this industry being exposed to has kind of watered it down. I mean, it really has.
Yeah, it has, man. And it doesn't mean that tattoo isn't as powerful. A younger generation, maybe they don't need to. I mean, it's like us talking about, we've built these families and you now have grandkids and it's a miracle and this is magical thing. But how about the generations before you guys, the people you've never met, that are the reasons why you exist?
Right. Yep.
You're not necessarily acknowledging them to appreciate who you've got right in front of your face, your generations that you can touch. And I feel like it's strong that these younger people coming up in the world should know who Philip Liu is. They should know who these people are. Why? Because they had impact on me. Why does it matter that they need to know them? I guess ultimately it doesn't. It's dissolving with their ancestors. And, you know, what's important to them is who's in their current circle of the same age group. You know, I imagine you and I are having our conversation because we do share a lot of the same people in our circle. You know, I don't really share much of a circle with a 26-year-old, and it's not even that appealing to me because you don't share the same power that these people.
Yep.
It sparked so much for me creatively, soulfully. It drew me in, it conjured me, you know, and those are the people that I owe it to.
100%.
So when it comes down to who do I want to work with, who would I be trying to make a trip to, it would be those.
Yeah.
Those are the pioneers for me, even though I know they go beyond them by thousands of years. Those are the ones that got me on the hook then. And you know,
Well, let me
somebody,
inspire you. You should 100% put that on your future to-do list and go work with Luke.
I would love to. You know, it's funny.
He's
I put him onto my car Instagram, and he follows me on there now. And you know, we're supposed to have a conversation about a problem he's having with his taxi. Uh, I don't know what it is. Maybe a carburetor issue or something.
okay.
And I'm not, you know, like overly mechanically savvy, but you know, I can narrow things down pretty easily. Uh, but yeah, you know, it's kind of funny that our contact had just been completely random. So I see it, you know, just out of nowhere. I've got him liking a bunch of stuff on my Instagram,
Yeah,
and he's
right.
made comments, and then reached out and asked for original artwork and what it is. But yeah, I feel
I
like
think you'd get a lot out of going out there, man.
I think so too, and I think that would be my next major tattoo trip. I would like to make a trip out
You
there
should.
and stick around for a
I think
while.
you'd find it really beneficial. I mean, I should do it
Well,
as well, but
well, that's what I was going to say. So that being said, I mean, we talk about, you know, you would rather work around somebody again that's talented that you think could nurture your interests
yeah,
in
yeah,
tattooing.
yeah, yeah.
I mean, if you had it, and I know this is a hard question, who do you think those people would be? I mean, is it somebody
Well,
that you've already worked with before that's had an impact on you, or somebody brand
well,
new that you've seen
I
in this world?
yeah, I don't know if I've worked with anyone that I wouldn't like to work with again. Like everybody, um, I mean, I've worked with so many great guys that it's like it's hard to pick and choose because they're all just awesome.
Well,
Um,
you definitely have your own thing. When I see a Phil Holt tattoo or a drawing, I know it's a Phil Holt image.
I mean, I've
But I
heard
see
that
that there's,
before. I don't see it, nor do I agree, but I've heard it enough to think it's a thing.
well, I feel like there's obvious influences, and
Yeah,
then your lineage laid out on paper, it connects the dots for us. We understand.
right.
And I think I probably have the same thing. I'm sure you could look at me from where you are if you know my work.
Hmm.
Surely you see some of the influences that I've had that's made
Yeah,
what I do, you know? And any of those people that you would go, he's probably been influenced by this person is likely somebody that I would love to work around.
yeah,
And likely somebody that I have not worked around or worked with. You know, I've been lucky enough to do some collaborations with some people. Uh, you know, Henry Lewis, that was completely random, and he and I have done a lot of collaborations with each other
hmm,
on skin, and that's been amazing. And you know, before I even met him, I knew of Henry Lewis, and I really liked his work. And I think he and I are kind of cut from the same cloth to a certain extent on social kind of situations. We all kind of bump shoulders with the same kind of artists, so those influences were
yep,
upon us both, you know,
right.
and it shows through our work. But yeah, it's really interesting, especially now in my life. And I was so close to doing this private studio thing and getting rid of my shop. And you ask how I do it. Well, I just agree. I will keep this because you guys want it. What
Yeah,
does this mean? It means another 3 years in this environment. And how am I going to make it suit my needs? And you just figure it out. And I'm glad that, you know, Jimmy and Ellen saved me from my own decisions. Uh, because now that I look at it in hindsight, it's terrifying. It's terrifying to be in a room confined to myself because we have that open environment now, and I can shout down to a tattooer five chairs down, and we can have a conversation and a laugh, and everybody in the shop, clients alike, get a giggle out of it,
Yeah.
and we're all enjoying ourselves as one big environment. And I know I'm getting older, and I know I'm going to want to focus on my own things at some point. And as much as I feel in my heart and soul that that's necessity, it's also terrifying to know that I'm reaching this point in my life, in my timeline, that I'm going to be there. But I'm hearing you now say that you've done that. You bit off that chunk and you're chewing it, and now you're at the point where you would love to work with somebody. Um,
Yeah,
and
I
that
mean,
must be because of that.
aging's tricky in general. Because I think for me, I am plagued with the how long can I physically do this? Um, like there's obviously there's some physicalities to tattooing, but the biggest one is having someone to tattoo, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
And so I'm always kind of wondering when the well's going to dry up. And as much as I think with like, I have a private studio right now. I've had studios in the past. I've had weird art galleries. I've had all sorts of weird settings for this. This is the fourth shop, so I've had different variations of it. I'm not married to this outside of 30 more months on my lease. So in 30 months, when my lease is up, I can move to a different location and hire some guys, or I can hang up the towel and go be about something else entirely. Like, I mean, you're not completely married to it. So I think that's kind of the nice part about it is you can change your setting. You could do a private studio for a few years. You could go back to a street shop setting with one room. You could, whatever. Sky's the limit.
Well, you're not married to any one thing, and you've got 30 months.
Yeah.
Are you married to Florida? It's where your kids and your grandkids are.
No. Well, no, my grandkids are actually in Texas.
Oh,
okay. Yeah, my oldest son was in the Army for 6 years, and his wife's from San Antonio. So when he got out of the service, he moved to San Antonio from Colorado.
I see.
So
are there?
I fly there to see the kids.
Well, 30 months is your timeline, and so that's burning at your brain.
A bit.
You know that there's a fuse.
What's burning at my mind more than the lease is my 14-year-old. So I'm not going to like hightail it when he's 18. But if when he's 18, he's like, hey, Dad, like I'm going to college in New York. It's like, well, I mean, I don't know. Maybe I moved to New York. Me and my
and you would have plenty of opportunity out there too. Plenty of people to work with. I'm sure, right?
And I think I have plenty of opportunities to do other things if I decided to migrate out of tattooing. Like I think that's also available.
What would that be?
What would I do?
Yeah, printing.
No idea.
But I mean, you don't have any one thing. Like if I stopped tattooing now, I absolutely would 100% be starting my own glass business. Whatever the hell that means. I would definitely be creating glass, and just, it might be one of those things. Like I'm drawing flash and pick from that. That's what I'm doing. Maybe I would be creating glass work and just say, hey guys, I've got this for sale. Do you want it? Or do an art show. But that is where I would be.
If it wasn't like a financial decision, like if it was just like a pick anything kind of thing, I would just paint. If it was just like money's no object, what kind of business could you work at, 50 hours a week, and I would just paint. That would be my choice. But I don't know how much you know about painting. It doesn't really pay very well. So, it's a tough gig unless your name's James Jean, right?
Right. So, no kidding.
Yeah. So I don't really see that as being an option on feeding myself. So probably whatever, if or when I transition out of tattooing, I assume there'll be a lot of like prayer involved into like what options do I even have, because I don't really know what the answer to that is. But I'm married to Florida for the next 4 years, and then kind of the strings are going to get loosened a little bit when my kids are all 18, right? And so me and
How
my
about
wife,
your wife?
well, we talk about it a lot, you know, where I would think that if there's a move in the future, it'll be for her career, not mine.
And what is that? What does she do?
Well, she's actually finished. She's got a couple weeks left in grad school, but she's a graphic designer, but moving into marketing.
Oh, cool.
Yeah. So,
And she stays busy enough with that.
With market, yeah, for sure. Yeah. I mean, she has a 9-to-5 job.
Yeah. Okay.
So yeah, I mean, depending on what career, yeah, dude, we're like really all over the place. Like I'm going in September, I'm going to Cambodia for a few weeks to work in an orphanage. And there's part of me that's like concerned. Like, I don't want to move to Cambodia. I don't think, but I could see that being something that happens. Like I could see it being a thing where like I go and it's like, all right, like I freaking fell in love with the jungle and now I live here. So it's really kind of wide open on what we could do. We definitely me and my wife talk about it a lot, you know, on the freedom we'll have depending on what my kids do of leaving for like, you know, expat, you know, that could be an option. So I'm not afraid of leaving the country for sure. I would never leave my kids, even when they're adults, you know, but if they all kind of do what my oldest did and drift off and live in Texas, and one lives in California, one lives in New York. And it's like, well, man, like I might as well move to Peru and start over and I'll visit or whatever. So
if you've got to travel to see them, why not?
You got to travel. Like I'm not afraid of traveling. So
yeah.
So it's just kind of like interesting to think about. I very well could stay in Florida. You know, that's very possible.
Were you born there?
No, I'm from Minneapolis or Minnesota.
Oh, okay. What got you into Florida anyway?
I moved here in high school, just with my mom.
Nice.
Yeah.
And then
I grew up like out in the, you know, in the farm country of Minnesota, and then moved into the cities when I was 15, and then moved to Florida at the end of 15. And then, you know, I lived in Ohio and Chicago and California, and I moved around a lot when I was younger.
Speaking of that, you know, I mean, God, I feel like we could talk for hours and hours catching up on things.
We already have.
Yeah.
Yeah, we'll have to do another segment because we should wrap this up before too long, but go ahead.
Yeah. I'm curious. You mentioned coming through Kansas City, and you had your Arthur Bryant's shirt on, and we kind of started this a couple nights ago, but what was it that brought you through Kansas City? You said that you were with Jason Condell, is that right?
Yeah, dude, honestly, I don't really remember, and I'd have to call Condell and say exactly what happened, but I'd moved to San Jose from Chicago. I'd been doing guest spots at New School with Adrian and Paco and Condell and Adam Barton and Ron Earhart. Like, that was the crew back then. And I left Chicago to move to San Jose, kind of to take Jason's spot. Him and Grime were opening up AWR in San Francisco. So he was going to leave New School. I was going to try to muscle my way into his position. And that's what happened. But when I moved there, there was a little gap where I don't remember exactly how this works now. But me and Condell were really good friends. And I don't remember if I lost a bet or if it was a dare or something. But we flew to Kansas City to eat barbecue. And that was the only reason we went, was just to eat barbecue. And we flew there, I think September 8th of 2001.
2001. So
we got stuck in September 11th, mayhem.
Oh, shoot.
So we flew out there, I think September 8th for like a week. And we were just tattooing and eating barbecue. And we got stuck in September 11th and basically bummed rides home from Kansas City to San Francisco.
No kidding. Just hitchhiking.
Not hitchhiking necessarily. It was like a friend of a friend of a friend would be like, hey, call this guy. He might be able to give you a lift. And I mean, so it was pretty random. Matt Hodel drove us to Denver, but we didn't know who Matt was, and I don't remember who put us in touch. Do you know Matt?
Man, Matt Hodel sounds
He tattooed
familiar
in
enough
St.
that I
Louis.
should know.
Yeah, and I think he worked at
Trader Bob's?
yeah, I think it was Trader. Yeah, he worked at Trader Bob's, and I can't remember if he worked with. I don't know, and I don't want to speak out of turn. I think maybe he worked with Danny.
Whispering Danny?
Yeah, I don't
In
remember.
Kansas City.
Yeah, in Kansas City. I'm not sure if he did or not. But there was, yeah, so I don't, man, I wish I remembered all the chaos, but it was a crazy time, right? And so I feel like maybe Alan and Hodel came out from St. Louis and drove us to Denver. But we broke down a few times, and then we stayed in Denver for a bit. And I don't remember where we stayed when we were in Denver. I know Fuse was out there. I don't know if you know Larry, or he writes Fuse for AWR. He was out there.
I don't, surprisingly.
We kind of then bummed a ride with, oh man, the guys from FTW in Oakland drove us back. I mean, it was pretty nuts, you know.
It sounds like a good time in the end.
Long trip, man. It's just so long ago now. It's kind of foggy.
Yeah, man. I remember. So in 2001, I had just turned 21 when the 9/11 thing happened.
Yep.
And
were you tattooing?
Yeah, I was
Where were you
tattooing.
at?
I was barely in it. I was in a place called Stigmata Tattoo.
Okay.
And my mentor from that joint, he was my second kind of apprenticeship opportunity, but he's who I give all my credit to as far as really bringing me in and kind of push me along. His name is Tony LaRose.
Okay.
I actually just saw him a couple days ago. He now has a shop again. He lived in Florida for quite some time and had a shop in Sarasota, I want to say.
Yep.
But he's back here, and I had. What's that?
That's close to me. Yep.
Oh, okay. It seemed like pretty small town stuff over there. I did visit. I did.
Yep.
Yeah. But he's back out here, and I kind of swung by his shop and caught up with him, and it had been a long time, but really smart fella. He's really knowledgeable, real fun to talk to, and it's been a long time. But he brought me in. That was at Stigmata. But that was still very heavy in my graffiti portion of my life. And, you know, most of my connections were California connections, and they were all, you know, AWR people, you know, like everybody at that point kind of knew each other through this little grapevine. And I always knew of Jason Condell, but I never knew of him by Jason, you know, right. And it was 2001, and I was over in the Kansas City, Kansas side, which I'd never really go over too much. I'm in Kansas City, Missouri. That's where most of Kansas City is, right? So I just happened to be at this. It was actually a car event. I was there for a little lowrider show in a parking lot in Kansas City, Kansas. And it was in the parking lot of a grocery store that was no longer, but they still had the payphone shells out in front, and they removed all the payphones. That's when like a lot of drug deals were going through the payphones. So they were getting removed from certain areas. It was definitely in the hood, and I saw a tag. I saw a blessed tag on a payphone, and it was right then. And I thought, what the hell? What's this dude doing through here? He must be going to St. Louis for this graffiti thing. Right. Because a lot of those guys who back then it was pen pal. You just got like an address from somebody, and you would just send flicks back and forth of trains and black books and stickers and whatever it was. And ultimately, that's how I got involved with a bunch of AWR guys back then. And he was one of them. So I would end up getting some stuff, you know, that was drawings or stickers from him, but I had never met him, never knew what his name was, and he never knew what my name was. But I saw that tag, and that's like when I was getting into tattooing, and then it was like connecting the dots between, oh, you're so-and-so and you're so-and-so.
Right.
And that was a time I saw one blessed tag over there and I was like, man, I'm a fan of this guy's work. That's crazy that he came through town and I had no idea.
Yep.
But yeah, that must have been all that time ago. And I thought maybe, because you tattooed a sleeve on a guy that owns a shop out here.
Yeah.
And I thought maybe you did that in Kansas City. Did he end up?
I did that when I lived in Chicago.
Okay.
Yeah.
And so he was going to you in Chicago.
Yeah, he was coming up to
Is
Chicago.
that right?
Yeah.
Okay. So I thought maybe you guys had worked at that shop out in Kansas City all those years back.
So when September 11th happened, we did. And that dude put us up because we didn't have anywhere to stay. So what happened with us is we were at a hotel and, I don't know, 6 a.m, middle of the night for us, like we were up all night. So Jason's wife called us at the hotel and I just remember answering the phone, like there's a little phone between the two beds or whatever. And I answer the phone and it's his wife, Ada. And she's like, is Jason there? I was like, yeah. So I passed the phone to Jason and he's like, turn the TV on, And so I rolled over in bed and turned the TV on and it was the towers, going down. And so we were both like, okay, let's think quick here. Like, let's get out of town. Like, let's rent a car and let's get back to the Bay Area. We'll just drive and whatever, we'll burn the car when we get to San Francisco, And so we checked out of our hotel and went to go get a rental car. And it was like, nah, dude, there's no rental cars. Like they're gone. Like, and we moved pretty fast and all the rental cars were gone because all the planes got downed in the middle of the country. Right. So all these people that are on like early morning flights, all those planes dropped and all those people got stranded at random airports and all the cars were gone. So then we were like, oh crap, we can't get out of town. Let's go back to the hotel. We get back to the hotel and they're like, nah, dude, the rooms are gone. There's nowhere to stay. So we couldn't find anywhere to stay. Like we had nowhere to go and we had no way to get out. So that dude that I tattooed, I think his name was Rod or Ron.
Rod, yeah.
Rod. Mm-hmm. He put us up at the shop. Like he went and got a couple air mattresses and got us some blankets and let us stay there for a few days while we figured out how to get out of town.
Yeah. Wow.
And then we started, I mean, I just, I don't remember exactly how this panned out, but Kundell was trading tattoos with the chef at Arthur Bryant's for plates of meat.
Yeah. That's awesome, man.
he was all about trading for sausages and brisket and stuff. It was pretty awesome.
Dude, so that's cool.
We had a great time. I love Kundell. I haven't talked to him in quite a while, but he's definitely one of my favorite people on the planet.
Yeah. Even still, after all of these years and how close we are in connectivity through other people, I've never met that guy either.
Kundell.
Yeah. Maybe I've met him, but hell, it's hard. I was just trying to think of where I met you. I think maybe I met you in, man, have you ever done did you do the Star of Texas?
I have. Yeah.
Convention
in Austin?
Yeah.
Is that?
Yeah. I feel like maybe I met you there a long, long time ago. Do you know who Miles Carr is?
Yeah. How do I know who Miles is?
Miles also worked. He was part of Three Kings. He was one of the original owners of Three Kings in New York.
Right. Yeah, I know Miles. Yeah.
Very good buddy of mine. And I ended up doing that convention with him. And I think you and I briefly met at that one.
Yep, probably.
I couldn't quite recall, but
conventions are certainly a blur for me. Like
yeah. Well, it's a meet and greet on steroids. Period. Yeah.
Like my brain kind of checks out at those things.
Yeah, they're a good time for all kinds of reasons and a terrible time for all kinds of reasons too. And I'm going to do this Sacramento convention, basically the replacement of that San Francisco convention. It's like, do I even want to work? Like I want to be,
I really want to do that
absorbing
show.
It, you know?
Yeah. It looks really fun. That's coming up quick.
June. Yeah. First weekend of June.
Yep.
No interest to get out there then. So last minute, huh?
Oh, yeah, I don't think I could do it this year. I don't have a invite or anything like that. So I don't know if I'd be able to work it anyways. No, yeah, it's never worked. I think me and my wife are going to spend a couple weeks in California in May, so can't do it this time. And I'm going to the Hudson Valley Convention this week.
Oh yeah, right.
Yep. So I'll be up there for a week, and that's really the only convention I do anymore.
Miles will be up at that one too.
Is he?
He was
Okay,
just
cool.
talking about it. Yeah.
So
That
do you know Brandon Holt?
I've met him.
Okay.
We're not like in close contact or anything. He's
Okay.
just more of like somebody we all know.
You know his work, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we do that convention together. Like he flies out from Minnesota, and
It sounds like a good one.
yeah,
What is it? It's like on its 5th or 6th year now at this point, huh?
yeah, something like that. Yep. Yeah, I think the first one happened, and then maybe there was two, and then COVID shut it down, and then they started back up. So
Yeah.
it's a good show. I like doing it.
I'm definitely getting back into the point now where I think I could schedule some more trips like that, and just make things happen, which, boy, doing the San Francisco conventions, and then that was the last one before COVID happened, and then, had kids.
I might have met you there as well. I usually pop up on that one.
It's possible, man. That was a good one.
Yeah.
That was like one of the best ones. And which other one I really enjoyed, and Justin Weatherholtz does is that Pagoda City.
Yeah. I might have met you there also.
Yeah, I did that one once. Shared a booth with Henry and Miles.
Okay.
And BJ Betts, Henry, and I did a big 3-way collaboration on some guy.
Okay.
A guy that I had to chase down. I snuck into his vehicle. He was trying to duck out on paying us.
No way.
Yeah, that's a story all in itself. But I was watching him closely, and in the commotion, that dude was trying to slip out. No. A giant. He's a giant. I was crazy. I don't know why I did it. It was just natural instinct to.
He got tattooed by all three of you and tried to dip without paying?
Try to dip without paying. And he was using his Masonic relationship with BJ to like get in with us. And I had to yell at him a couple times because he was very talkative and like moving around. And, I drew this whole thing on his back. It was some lettering. It said Master Mason. And we ended up all collaborating on this thing and taking rotations. But every time I was tattooing him, the dude's moving all around. I'm trying to make a nice tattoo. You got to sit still, man. I'm trying to do a good job. You got to help me do it. Right. All right. And then at one point I just like
snap.
I did. I snapped, and I could tell he wasn't very happy. Every time I was rotating in, he'd get quiet and he'd behave. And that's exactly what I wanted him to do. We're trying to give him a good tattoo.
Yep.
And so I knew. I was like, all right, I've blown it with this guy, and he's blown it with me. So when it came down to, we're in this convention, the commotion of the convention, so it's pretty busy around there. And he was a giant, but he ended up like kind of sneaking out and going out the doors while Henry and BJ are chatting it up and, having conversations with other guys. And I just kept a few paces behind this guy. And I followed him all the way out of the hotel into the parking lot. And it's nighttime at this point. It's like, well, he just walked by the ATM. And so we got out, and he was going his route to his vehicle. And I was kind of going through other cars in the parking lot, kind of keeping my distance, just watching where he's going. And I saw the lights on his car. He hit the remote.
Yeah.
And I was like, this fool's trying to dip. So I quickly went over there, and I just opened the passenger door, and I sat down, and his big ass getting in there was slow. I was like, peekaboo, here I am. Where are you going? And he was like stunned that I was in his car. And I'm thinking, oh shit, I just got in this guy's car and he could totally kill me, but I'm going to karate chop his Adam's apple. Like that was just my plan. I'm going to take this guy down no matter what it is. I'll gouge your eyes out. I just had it all planned. And I was like, where are you going? You better be going to get my money. And he was like, oh, my lady's in the hotel room. I was just going to drive around to the backside and go get your money. I was like, cool, I'll ride with you. Let's roll. And I'm like texting Henry and BJ like, yo, I just put myself in a terrible position. I'm in this guy's car and they want me to drop a pin. I don't know what that even means. I was like, look, I'm getting our money no matter what. This is what's happening. I am apparently going, I'm texting discreetly. And he's claiming to go to his lady's room to get the money, but she's drunk in there. I was like, cool, let's whip this around. Well, let's go to the front. We passed an ATM. I want all of my money. And he ended up turning around and we went in there. And, I just acted like, well, I'm in touch now with people and they know that I'm with you.
Yeah.
We're going in there and you're giving me my money. And he sat there at the ATM and I took a picture of his backside at the ATM getting all our money. And he gave it to me and then dipped out. And I went back into the convention with it and was like, hey guys, like, yeah, I'm alive. And they ended up just giving me all the money. They're like, I can't believe you chased that fool down and got in his car. I was like, I don't know what I was thinking, but I was going to kill this guy.
Yeah.
Yeah, I want my money. Do not mess with me.
That's
and yeah, I just dipped into his car. But that was a pagoda convention. And I was like, man, this was a really good time, minus that situation, which now is like part of the joy. But yeah, I'm going to try and do that one this year too.
Okay.
And try and make that happen, hopefully.
But yeah, I want to, I'll probably start traveling again. I'm excited to go to Hudson Valley. I'd like to do the Sacramento one, maybe next year. But
that'd be good, man.
I think door down or something to figure out how to get into that thing.
I doubt it would be hard to make happen.
Yeah.
I have a feeling anybody could just say your name and they say, oh shit, we should have reached out to him anyway,
Yeah, I don't know about that. But
so, well, hey man, regardless of what you think has happened, you've created a groove in this thing and I've fallen in the path of it.
Yeah. Well, you should come down sometime and work here.
Man, I would love to, man.
Anytime,
I would love to just make a
Doors
trip. Man, for real, I definitely feel like we can. It looks like here we've got 2.5 hours of conversation.
Yeah.
And I feel like we've barely scratched any of the deeper things that I would have liked to talk to you about. But
let's do it again. Yeah, I mean, I think this one's time to wrap up. Pretty long. Yeah, we should do it again. And I mean, seriously, think about it, man. Like, we could do it in person. I mean, if you want to come down and work for a couple of days, Tampa's a pretty sweet spot to visit.
I would love to. And I've got I actually have a guy from Tampa that's going to be working at my shop. He's younger, does some really nice quality work.
What's his name?
His name is Matt Broughton.
Okay.
Does real fine line stuff, real stipply stuff, but he's out there and he's talked about Tampa. So, seems like a pretty decent spot. A couple graffiti writers. That's where Art Basel. No, that's in Miami. Yep. That's in Miami. Right.
I don't know if they do it anymore. I used to go every year. Me and Barber and Nagel would go every year together.
Nice, man. I've always wanted to do that. There's a guy that wrote Typo. He was a graffiti dude and would always invite me out there. And he always had some really unique work. And I thought I should go. And I think he's just from Tampa, maybe. Okay. So that's where I'm getting some of that from. But
well, if you ever want to hit Basel, let me know, because December is pretty nice here.
Oh yeah, December. That's why.
First week of December. Yep.
Man, I'd love to, man. Let's do this again.
Yeah, let's do it.
I really appreciate it, man.
Thanks for taking all the time, man, to sit on here and rant and deal with all the technical difficulties. I
whatever.
Definitely appreciate it.
Look, it's an honor. It's an honor to be asked, and it's an honor to do it. So I really appreciate it too, Phil.
Let's definitely stay in touch.
All right, bro. I'll talk to you soon.
All right, see ya.
Later.